Hey guys, you are watching your anime world. How are you all? Please support to subscribe this channel for watching new interesting stories. So in this video, we will see second part, what if Deku and Itsuka joined forces at the sports festival. Here is short summary. What if Izuku had met Itsuka at the sports festival? How would things have changed? A retake on MHA from Itsuka Kendo's perspective, with Izukendo being the main pair. But before we start, if you want more stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe and like this video. And if possible, share this video with your friends. Now let's start the story. Itsuka was sitting alone at home. Her parents had taken her little brother off to the cinema, so she had nothing to do at the time. Her mind wandered to the argument Kirishima and Todoroki had with Iida. She still didn't know what to make of it at the moment. For one, she comprehended the frustration and anger Izuku, Todoroki and Kirishima felt. Itsuka knew she would have been just as fired up as them if it had happened to a member of her own class or to a member of her family. However, she knew that they were acting mostly out of frustration and guilt. Acting so recklessly due to their emotions was wrong, and she knew it. If they got caught, not only would they be risking their lives and Bakugo's life, but they'd cause even more problems for the UA staff, who were already on their nerves because of all the blame the media had been piling up on them. While she didn't have an opinion on Class A's argument to save Bakugo or not, she was leaning more towards the people that wanted Kirishima, Todoroki and Izuku to stay put. Recklessness could put them in danger, or worse, it could put others in danger. Itsuka thought about Uraraka. She still felt guilty about leaving her alone to find Toga. The sight of Uraraka laying on the floor, covered in her own blood, barely conscious, is one she'll never forget. And the worst part is that it probably wouldn't have happened if Itsuka had just stayed back with them. Itsuka decides to not think about the issue for now. Uraraka was still out cold, and there was no room to apologize to her as long as she stayed that way. Perhaps something interesting was happening on the news for once. Itsuka turns on the TV and changes channels quickly, not being interested in most things by this point. The stress she had gone through at the camp had taken a toll on her mentally. Itsuka was starting to feel gloomy. There it was again, that same old feeling of helplessness and inferiority. Itsuka felt like she could have captured Toga if she was stronger, like she could have helped more people if she was smarter, like she could be a better friend to Izuku and everyone else if she was just better. Izuku was starting to be noticed by a lot of people, villains included. All because he was just always there. He was always seen surpassing his limits. He was always saving people. What did she have to show for her time at UA? A cringy commercial she had filmed along with Yaoyorozu and Uebami. How would people take her seriously if that's all she got going for her? Speaking of which, that was also something that was starting to get on Itsuka's nerves. Ever since she filmed that stupid ad, people seemed to have put her and Yaoyorozu together in a box. That wasn't something Itsuka liked. It felt like people were constantly comparing them to each other now, and it was something Itsuka hated. If Itsuka managed to shine, she wanted to do so on her own, not because she was seen next to the mighty, pretty and beautiful Momo Yaoyorozu. Thinking about Yaoyorozu like this felt wrong, but Itsuka couldn't help it. Momo Yaoyorozu was smarter, prettier, had better grades, a better quirk, made better plans. The fact that people were constantly comparing them to each other wasn't helping Itsuka's self-esteem at all. The fact that Yaoyorozu had been so friendly towards Itsuka thus far also didn't make her feel any better. It felt like Itsuka was feeling negative towards someone who had done nothing wrong, and she was right on that. How could Itsuka feel this way about someone who only wanted to be friends with her? Judging by how she had acted throughout the internship, Yaoyorozu didn't even want to be on that commercial either. The fact that people thought of them as a duo was something not even Yaoyorozu had expected. Yaoyorozu wasn't to blame for any of this, but the fact still remained. Maybe people were just right. Maybe Momo was just better than her. Itsuka sighed as she kept changing channels. She didn't like feeling like this, but it was becoming harder to deny the sad truth of her reality. Yaoyorozu was rising along her class, along with Izuku. God, would she even be good enough for Izuku if she asked him out? Would people tell him to ditch her because she wasn't up to his level. Would he turn her down if she came clean? Would Yaoyorozu be better for him than her? Perhaps none of this was true and it was just some temporary sadness speaking at the moment, but the fact is that most of these things were happening all the same. Izuku and Momo were rising in popularity. Itsuka was being compared to Momo every day. Society was becoming shittier as the days passed, and Izuku was always somehow surpassing her expectations. Itsuka felt lonely without him. She didn't think much of him at first, but as she spent more and more time with him, Izuku Midoriya had managed to do what many others had tried in the past unsuccessfully. He had won her over. Seeing him in such a broken state at the hospital made her feel like her heart was being shattered, and the fact that he blamed himself for Bakugo's abduction just made her heart clench even more. He was so noble and self-sacrificing that she couldn't stay mad at him for hurting himself. He always had a way to make her feel frustrated when he hurt himself just to save someone. And yet, that was one of the things she loved the most about him. Itsuka sighs fondly at the memory of Izuku. For him, she would promise something to herself. From that day, she would do everything she could to be worthy of him. Even if she had to work herself to the point of exhaustion, she would do it to stay by his side. Itsuka really hoped he didn't go through with Kirishima's plan to rescue Bakugo, but in case he did, she just hoped he was be fine. Itsuka's train of thoughts is stopped abruptly when she reaches the news. What the hell? The news show All Might fighting some kind of villain at Kamino. The villain looks particularly strong, and All Might looks worn down for some reason. Seeing All Might not smiling is something no one was used to, but seeing him this angry was unsettling. Itsuka witnesses All Might charge at the villain, but the villain shoves All Might back as if he was some lightweight wannabe. What the hell? That villain looks stronger than any other villain I've ever seen, thinks Itsuka to herself as All Might recovers. The villain shoots a large gust of wind towards the hero, covering the entire field. Once the smoke clears and the wind calms down, all Itsuka sees is a familiar-looking man. A very skinny, pale, weak-looking man with hollow cheeks and sunken eyes she had seen before. Itsuka can't suppress her voice anymore. What the beep? That's the man that was talking to Izuku at the sports festival. But no, that can't be All Might. It's as if he deflated. For a couple of moments the battleground is silent. The villain can be seen talking to All Might. Then, the unexpected happens. All Might looks demoralized. Itsuka couldn't believe it. What the actual hell had the villain said to All Might? All Might lets out a scream, which can't be captured by the cameras, but the pain and remorse in his eyes are clear to see to the audience. Itsuka panics. No, no, you can't give up now, All Might. We're all counting on you. Itsuka notices that there's someone behind All Might. A woman is caught on the debris of a recently destroyed building, but she looks far from scared. The woman is shouting at All Might something the cameras can't capture, but Itsuka knows well what she's doing. She's cheering for him. Itsuka gets up to her feet and shouts at the TV, as if All Might could hear her by some miracle. All Might, come on. You got this. We believe in you. Itsuka hears many people from nearby apartments and houses shout with the same energy as her towards their own TV screens. Many cries of encouragement could be heard outside, as if millions of people across the city, or even the country, were cheering for All Might at this very moment. Everyone's hopes and dreams are united, and they all strive towards one outcome. To encourage All Might, to see that mighty symbol of evil defeated. To see their symbol of peace live another day. All Might, you can beat him. He's nothing you can't defeat. Don't give up. You're our symbol of peace, All Might. We're all counting on you. Never surrender, All Might. Do your best, All Might. We love you. You're not alone, All Might. You can do it. Itsuka feels some tears forming on the corners of her eyes, but she doesn't care. Right now, all she can focus on is All Might. All Might, you can do this. Beat him. Then, Itsuka sees that the cameras focus on some pro-heroes who are just arriving. Endeavor and Edgeshot try to attack the villain while Tiger and Kamui Woods take the wounded woman out of the debris. Itsuka feels like everything would be fine now that help was finally arriving. But that moment of happiness is stripped away as soon as it came. The villain blows away the heroes that were pestering him before undergoing a monstrous transformation on his right arm, causing it to become an enlarged mutated arm filled with numerous deadly screws and hardened minerals. Itsuka feels her heart drop. Who the beep is this guy? The villain and All Might dash towards each other, clashing and punching each other's enlarged fists with as much strength as they can muster. Itsuka felt her heart drop when she saw All Might's arm be crushed, but she saw that All Might had done it on purpose. With his uninjured left arm, All Might launches a punch towards the villain's face, getting him to drop his guard. And then, All Might inflates his broken right arm instantly before punching the villain in one last attack. United States of SMAAAAASH. The cameras barely had time to capture All Might's last message before the broadcasting helicopter was engulfed in a twister so powerful it carries nearby buildings through the air. After the dust settles, the villain is seen badly beaten and unconscious on the ground, while All Might towers over the villain in his inflated form. Itsuka feels like crying. Yes, he did it. The next few moments pass quickly. Itsuka has spent most of them thinking about All Might's fight with the villain and thinking if she could ever hope to reach his level. However, the camera focuses on All Might one more time. Itsuka immediately pays attention to the screen. All Might faces away from the camera and raises his arm, pointing at it. Now, it's your turn. Itsuka feels like crying again. All Might was truly the best hero Japan ever had. To send one last message to the remaining villains out there who might wanna keep committing crimes and assure that the symbol of peace was still kicking around. God, he was great. Unbeknownst to her, a green-haired boy on the other side of town was currently crying silently to himself, as he was the only one who had truly gotten the message. And so, a new era began for everyone. One which was bound to be more unstable yet had potential. Turns out that the pro-hero that was missing was actually kidnapped by the villains as well. Ragdoll's quirk was missing, and she was officially no longer suited to be a pro-hero. Best Jeanist and Mount Lady were badly hurt, but they were still in good shape to fight off crime after some time in recovery. Endeavor was supposed to take the title of #1 hero, although he had been missing ever since All Might's fight with that villain had ended. Some of his closest colleagues suspected it was because he didn't feel like he earned that place. But perhaps the biggest change Itsuka had noticed was one that affected her directly. She was supposed to move to UA, as it was transitioning to a boarding school after the Camino incident. All Might had officially retired as a pro-hero, and so, society had lost their symbol of peace. All the pressure upon the heroes was starting to mount up. The USJ incident, the forest camp incident, the heroes' failure to protect their students. It was safe to say, the people were shaking in their boots. However, to Principal Nezu it just meant that they'd need to be extra prepared for any further incidents targeted towards the students that might happen in the future. Building the students' dorm rooms would be a pretty efficient way to keep the kids safe, at least for the moment. The teachers needed to convince the parents of every student to stay at UA, but surprisingly enough, most had happily accepted the offer. Itsuka's parents were no exception. They were always too busy anyway, so having Itsuka safe at UA would be better than leaving her at home alone as it usually happened. The only one who had been opposed to the idea was Itsuka's little brother, but Itsuka had assured him that it wouldn't be permanent. Itsuka was a little bummed out about her parents not putting up more resistance for her to stay with them, but she assumed it was because they trusted her. Right. Either way, this was a pretty big change for everyone. The moment Itsuka walked into their class's new dorm she was surprised at how well it was built. And in 3 days only. Still, as the class president it felt like she'd have to put her foot down in case her classmates took advantage of this one way or another. That looked like wouldn't happen, though. Her classmates had gone through a lot, and the last thing on anyone's minds at the moment was breaking the rules. One of the things Itsuka was the most grateful for was getting to see her friends again. All her friends who had been hurt were now back to normal. Itsuka would have never thought she'd feel so relieved to see Monoma in her life, but here he was. Tetsu was already back to his old cheery and straightforward self too, and he looked more eager than ever to train. Abara had also warmed up to her friends again, and in general, the air felt lighter now that everyone was back together. Itsuka had just finished putting the final touches on her room's decorations, and before she noticed it, it was late afternoon. Itsuka sat on her bed, looking at the way her room had ended up. She was a bit tired from all she had to move, but there was something that was still bugging her. Itsuka looked to her side and saw her phone. She rolled her eyes before unlocking it, and the first thing she saw was a message from the news depicting the current state of the country thanks to All Might's retirement. People were angry at the heroes, yet demanded them to fix everything themselves. Itsuka sighed. When will people just be calm? Sure, there were a couple of unfortunate incidents, but it's not like the heroes can just make the problems and villains disappear with a snap of their fingers. Plus, they put all their expectations on All Might due to him being called the symbol of peace. All Might was the #1 hero because he had a power do great it made bad guys tremble whenever they heard him say, "I am here." The way he did. What if All Might had never gotten that power in the first place? Or what if that power had ended up in the hands of a very bad person? Where would society be then? Itsuka frowned at the thought of All Might. Now that his secret had been exposed, Itsuka was 100% sure that He was the person talking to Izuku at the sports festival. Itsuka tried to remember more of the conversation, but a lot of time had passed since then, and she could only remember small snippets that came and went, although Itsuka did remember Izuku talking to All Might about something called One for All, and not getting hurt while using it. Itsuka had to admit, she missed Izuku. She wanted to see him and just talk to him. It had been about a week since she had last spoken to him at the hospital, and she already missed him dearly. She looked at the clock in her wall and saw that she still had quite a lot of time before curfew, so perhaps seeing him wasn't out of the question. Itsuka sighed before getting up. Class A's dorms were just next to theirs, so the walk there would be pretty short. It was then that Itsuka finally realized that she was essentially living next to him already. Itsuka shook her head to fight off the blush on her cheeks before exiting her room. Itsuka's classmates were pretty tired from decorating their rooms themselves, which meant everyone was either already asleep or resting in their room. This was a relief to Itsuka, since she wouldn't have to bump into someone unexpectedly and explain herself. The sky was already dark, and yet, Itsuka noticed that the 1A dorms had their lights on still, meaning that the students were still up. The moment Itsuka comes around the corner and takes a peek at the Class A entrance door, she sees Izuku, Todoroki, Kirishima, Iida, Yaoyorozu, Uraraka and Tsuyu huddled up and hugging each other. Itsuka was a bit surprised at first, but judging from the sounds coming from them, they appeared to be crying. Itsuka decides to stay back for now to not disturb their privacy. Seeing Uraraka in better conditions was a relief, at least. Izuku withdraws from the group of students and looks away from them, as if he was ashamed of something. It was then that he noticed Itsuka at the end of the path to the dorms with a small smile on her face. Izuku looks back to his friends briefly before walking up to Itsuka with a small, teary-eyed smile of his own. Hey, Itsuka. Hey, Izuku. What are you doing here? I wanted to talk, if it's not too much trouble, of course. Izuku looks back to his friends, and notices that they are looking at him with small smiles. Iida and Yaoyorozu nod to Izuku before walking back to the dorms with Tsuyu huddled in between them. Izuku looks at Itsuka, wiping the remaining tears on his eyes. I think we can talk. Itsuka smiles at Izuku. Great, maybe, we can walk while we talk. Izuku smiles back. Yeah, we can. Itsuka holds Izuku's hand and walks off with him. The couple wander around UA aimlessly, finding comfort in each other's presence after not having seen each other in a week. Eventually, Itsuka speaks. So, crazy week, huh? Izuku chuckles. Yeah, you can say that. Itsuka squeezes Izuku's hand gently. Say, is Uraraka okay? Izuku smiles reassuringly at her. Yes, thankfully. She lost a lot of blood but she managed to recover just fine. She is amazing. Itsuka lets out a sigh of relief. I'm glad she's okay. And, what about the rest of the class? Izuku sighs. We're all fine, but we're still a little shaken up about. Well, you know. Itsuka nods. Yeah, I know. And, what were you doing just now? Did I interrupt something important? Izuku shakes his head. No, we were already done, don't worry about it. You see, we kinda did wander off to save Kachan. Itsuka frowns. You know, I weirdly expected that. Of course you did, you stupid, self-sacrificing, righteous idiot. Izuku sighs. Sorry, Itsuka, but, at least we managed to save him. Itsuka groans. So, what does that have to do with that back there? Izuku looks down in shame. Well, you remember Suyu's comment at the hospital, don't you? The fact that we still went off on our own really upset her, but what upset her more was the fact that she thought we wouldn't see her the same way after she basically called us villains. Itsuka's gaze softens. She hadn't spent nearly as much time with Suyu as she had with Izuku, but Suyu always seemed like a blunt girl who didn't care much for making friends, but to find out that her own words affected her this much was both surprising and saddening to Itsuka. Oh, I see. So, she wants things to go back to how they were before, huh? Izuku nods. Yes, the girls of our class put together a quick competition between the entire class to see who had the best room. I thought it was something they came up with out of the blue, but they really did it to make sure we all let bygones be bygones. Itsuka smiles softly. That's nice. I'm glad you have such good friends and classmates, Izuku. Izuku smiles too. Yeah, I'm glad too. I honestly feel like I receive too much sometimes. The conversation ends as quickly as it had started. There were many things both had to say to each other, but the way to talk about them felt out of reach. Izuku sighs before looking away from Itsuka. Itsuka, what's the real reason you wanted to talk to me? Itsuka looks at the ground. Well, I've been wanting to talk to you for some time now. About important stuff. Stuff only you could understand, Izuku. Izuku looks at Itsuka with a curious expression. Stuff only I could understand. Like what? Itsuka sighs. Well, many things. Like, your deal with All Might for one. Izuku gulps. Ah, my deal with All Might. What do you mean, Itsuka? Itsuka looks at Izuku with a firmer expression. I might have overheard you talking to him before the battle tournament at the sports festival, Izuku. Izuku's brain freezes for a moment. Are you sure that was me talking to All Might, Itsuka? Maybe you got the wrong guy. That's what I thought at first, but after the Kamino incident and All Might's exposure I can safely say you were talking to All Might, Izuku. Itsuka crosses her arms. So, what's your deal with him? Izuku's mind starts to panic. How much had she overheard? Was she mad at him? Had she figured out the secret of his quirk? Itsuka uncrosses her arms, letting out a sigh before a sad expression covers her features. Izuku, it's fine if you don't wanna tell me, but I guess I just wanted to let you know that. This hurts me. I thought I had made it clear at the sports festival and again at Twinkle Park that you could tell me anything, but you either don't trust me or just feel like you can hide stuff from me. I'll find out eventually. Izuku feels his chest hurt as Itsuka talks. Itsuka, that's not it. That's not true. Itsuka looks away from him. Well, that's what it feels like to me. I'm sorry about this, Izuku. I know I shouldn't be talking like this to you, but I'm just frustrated and tired. Izuku looks at Itsuka with a worried expression. Why, Itsuka? Itsuka crosses her arms again, looking at the ground as the couple continue to walk. I feel like people don't take me seriously. At the sports festival, after my internship, in public. I feel like no one takes me seriously, and I'm tired of it. Izuku's eye widen in surprise. But, why would they do that? You're Itsuka Kendo, the class president and big sister of Class B. Itsuka groans. And yet, I always feel behind everyone. I mean, just look at yourself, Izuku. People recognize you in public, you managed to survive numerous villain attacks, you saved one of your friends from a really dangerous villain. What have I done all this time? Nothing. That's what. Izuku feels like his heart is about to burst in sadness. Itsuka, that's not true. Itsuka faces away from Izuku. Yes, it is. I want to be taken seriously, Izuku. I want to be my own hero, and be recognized by people as the capable person I know I am, but It's just hard for me to do so when it feels like people don't see me as anything other than some dumb meathead tomboy or Yaoyorozu's second in command. I mean, hell, you even went off to save Bakugo with her. I just... Izuku feels like crying again at the sight of his crush starting to tear up. Izuku places his hand on Itsuka's shoulder. Itsuka, I take you seriously. Itsuka places his hand away softly. Do you, Izuku? Because I feel like there's a lot of stuff you don't tell me. Is it because you don't trust me? Is it because you don't think I can handle it? Or is it because I'm just not enough? Izuku feels torn. On one hand, he had already betrayed Yue's trust by going off to save Bakugo, but on the other, being secretive was hurting him and Itsuka. Then, Izuku makes a decision. Okay, you have a point, Itsuka. From now on, no more secrets. Itsuka looks at Izuku with doubtful eyes. Izuku, I really want to believe you, but how do I know you won't just lie to me again? Izuku stops in his tracks, holding Itsuka's hands on his own and looking at her with a serious expression. Because I feel safe with you, Itsuka. All my life I've felt like I couldn't trust anyone. I always felt like no one would watch my back, because all I've ever gotten out of people is judging stares and disappointed looks. But I don't feel that way with you. I feel like I can tell you anything, like I can accept the past and embrace the future with a smile with you. You are my safe place, Itsuka. Itsuka looks at Izuku with wide eyes. The way he was holding her hands was firm and serious, yet it felt reassuring and calming instead of forceful. Itsuka felt her heart soar at the idea of Izuku being more open with her, and she smiles faintly. Wow, Izuku, you have no idea how much that means to me. I don't think I've ever felt this way with anyone else before. Izuku smiles at Itsuka. I feel the same way. And I'm sorry if it feels like I've been keeping secrets from you, Itsuka. I promise that won't be the case anymore. Ask me anything and I'll answer honestly, like you would like. Itsuka smiles before planting a quick kiss on Izuku's forehead. Thanks, you dork. Izuku blushes a bit before giving Itsuka's hands a gentle squeeze. I should be the one thanking you for staying with me despite my... you know. Itsuka chuckles. Yeah, I know. Say, perhaps you could start with your quirk, Izuku. I feel like that's the most secretive thing about you. Well, there's no backing down now. Izuku sighs before continuing to walk with Itsuka, holding her hand. Well, I guess I should tell you the story from the very beginning, like he told me. Okay, a long time ago, back when quirks were just starting to appear, society erupted into chaos. People began to question what it meant to be normal anymore, and fights began to arise between people with different types of quirks. Society decayed, and human progress slowed down to a halt. Itsuka nodded. That sounds about right. No matter what, it seems like we humans will fight over everything and anything. In that time of chaos, a man was able to gather many people together. He went by the name of his quirk. All for one. Itsuka felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She could swear she had seen that name before, in a really obscure history book depicting the absolute darkness of a previous era of human history. All for One's quirk allowed him to steal quirks for himself, and he could then decide to keep them or give them to other people. He gained many followers this way, since many people despised quirks and others desperately wanted one. Soon enough, he was the undisputed Lord of the Darkness, ruling Japan with an iron fist from the shadows. Itsuka felt the weight of Izuku's words, feeling goosebumps on her skin. However, All for One had a quirkless little brother who was sickly and weak, but had a strong sense of justice. The younger brother continued to resist All for One and condemn his actions, but All for One kept himself in power all the same. Itsuka looked down thoughtfully. Whoever that man was, he had her respect. The level of bravery and endurance they must have had to resist All for One for so long. It must have been unbearable. It's unknown whether it was an act of love or a way to make his brother submit to him, but one day, All for One gave his brother a quirk. A stockpiling quirk. However, not even All for One expected his brother to have a quirk. The brother had a useless quirk that allowed him to pass on quirks, and he decided to give this power to future generations hoping it would grow stronger to defeat All for One day. Izuku looks at Itsuka with a proud smile. That's the story of the quirk called One for All. By the time Izuku finished the story, Itsuka's eyes were practically saucers. One for all. Izuku continued. Yeah, One for All has been passed to All Might, and he eventually passed it on to me. That's why I've been spending a lot of time with him, Itsuka. Becca. Because you're bound to be his successor, interrupted Itsuka, whose surprised expression turned into a huge smile. Itsuka stopped on her tracks to hug Izuku as tightly as she could. Oh my god, I'm so proud of you, Izuku. Izuku could barely breathe. Thanks, Itsuka. Itsuka let go of Izuku with a grin. Sorry, I'm just, wow, the greatest hero of all time gave you his quirk. And you're bound to surpass him. You'll do amazing, Izuku. Izuku chuckles while rubbing his head sheepishly. Ah, thanks, Itsuka, but I'm still. Itsuka interrupts Izuku again. Now I get All Might's final message. He was talking to you, wasn't he? Izuku chuckles. Well, kinda, but, and now the way you punch makes sense. I always wondered why you looked so much like All Might. Itsuka, plus, the effects of your quirk also make sense now. I still wonder about the green lightning. Itsuka, sorry, Izuku. Itsuka rubs her head sheepishly. I'm just, really excited and happy for you. I mean, just look at you. On your way to become All Might's successor. Izuku sighs. Itsuka, I still have a long way to go. I can't be All Might's successor if I can't even save someone in front of me. I still haven't forgiven myself for the training camp incident. Itsuka's smile turns into a small frown. What, you're still blaming yourself for that? But, why? Izuku looks down. I still failed to save Kacchan. If I had been faster, stronger, smarter, then perhaps none of this would have happened. I could have saved him. I could have prevented All Might's retirement. I could have made a difference. Itsuka looks at Izuku with sympathetic eyes. The way he was talking about himself. It was like she was listening to herself at home, sulking over the fact that Uraraka got hurt and she was unable to prevent it. Hearing Izuku made Itsuka have a small epiphany. Itsuka didn't hesitate once before wrapping her arms around Izuku, enveloping him in a warm hug. Izuku looks at Itsuka with a small hint of surprise. Itsuka. Itsuka lets go of Izuku with an understanding smile on her face. Izuku, I understand how you feel. Believe me, I do. And now I realize something I should have known. We all make mistakes sometimes, but that's just how life goes. We have our high moments and low moments, but none define who we are. We are just humans, after all. Besides, the training camp incident was a situation no one could have seen coming. You can't blame yourself for something you had no control over, Izuku. It took me listening to you to understand I need to forgive myself too. Izuku smiles briefly before looking at Itsuka with a small hint of sadness. But, Kacchan was kidnapped because of my mistake. All Might retired because of my mistake. Itsuka places her finger on Izuku's lips to hush him. That's not true, Izuku. Sure, Bakugo got kidnapped, but it's not like you could have done much more. You were barely standing, and your arms were almost ripped off. As for All Might, well, what if you did save Bakugo? All Might would have been rendered powerless some other way and that villain would have been on the loose by now. Either way, we can't know that for sure. I know it sounds cliché for me to say it, but you need to forget and let go of that burden you put on your own shoulders, Izuku. None of this is your fault. Izuku smiles at Itsuka's words. The way she always calmed him down and supported him, was one he would never get tired of. Izuku rests his forehead against Itsuka's forehead softly, and she doesn't resist. Thanks, Itsuka. Itsuka nuzzles her forehead against Izuku's for a moment. No problem, dummy. You know, I think now I understand why you didn't want me to know about One for All. If society knew about it they'd begin to question All Might as the symbol of peace, and it would bring both you and him a whole new set of problems, wouldn't it? Like, the press would eat you two alive. Plus, knowing you, you probably didn't want to burden me with the knowledge of One for All, as only you would put it. Izuku chuckles. You know me so well. Itsuka holds Izuku's hands and rubs his fingers softly. Maybe so, Izuku. But I've said it before and I'll keep saying it until you get it once and for all. You're not alone. I'm here for you. Thanks for trusting me with this. I won't tell anyone. Izuku sighs fondly. Thanks for listening, Itsuka. Itsuka pushes Izuku away a little bit to stare at his eyes. By the way, if you really feel so insecure about the control you have over your quirk at the moment, then let me help you. Izuku raises an eyebrow. Help me? How? Itsuka chuckles while ruffling Izuku's hair. Not to sound rude or anything, but you're kinda a one-trick pony, Izuku. One for all can get you so far, but you'll need to get better with it. I can help you find some more ways to train with it. Like, I could teach you martial arts if you'd be willing to learn. Izuku widens his eyes in surprise before a grateful and giddy smile covers his face. That's a great idea, Itsuka. I could learn offense and defense from you. Not to mention all the possibilities that could be opened to me by learning martial arts, like. Itsuka presses her finger to Izuku's lips again. Hold your horses there, cowboy. We can think about that later. Right now I just wanna keep talking to you. Izuku smiles while blushing slightly. I'd like that. What would you like to talk about, Itsuka? Itsuka looks at her watch for a moment. We have around 20 minutes or so before curfew. How about, oh, I know, you said your class held a room contest. I might wanna do that with my class. Tell me, tough guy, what were their rooms like? Izuku chuckles. It's a long story, so, got any updates on Itsu? Yeah, but you won't like it. What is it? Seems like she moved to UA. That'll make things slightly more difficult. But are we still good? Yeah, we are. She'll have to come out eventually. And when she does, we'll be ready. The following days had been quite pleasant for the pair. Now that Itsuka knew the secret of One for All, she had spent quite a lot of time training with Izuku. Itsuka was full on teacher mode while they were on the gym, but once the training was finished, she was just as sweet towards Izuku as she had been, and he couldn't get enough of it. On his part, Izuku had felt incredibly happy these past few days. Not only was he getting taught martial arts by his crush, but he also felt like he was contributing to her growth as a hero to not make Itsuka feel so left behind. Izuku had to adjust to the power of One for All and everything it entailed forcefully, more notably, its speed. During his internship with Gran Torino he had developed a new technique called full cowling, which gave him more maneuverability, although he had crashed on a few walls on his way to master it. Still, it had paid off, since Izuku's reflexes, which were already fast, had improved drastically. Izuku saw that Itsuka packed a lot of firepower with her quirk, and her training in martial arts gave her an outstanding technique. However, her attacks were a bit slow and predictable. Perhaps he could help Itsuka improve her speed and reflexes, he thought. In no time, Izuku became just as much of a teacher to Itsuka like she was to him. The pair kept training happily on the school's gym after classes for about a week, until a sudden notice from their teachers gave them a bit of a scare. From everything that happened, almost no one remembered that the students were supposed to get their provisional hero licenses soon, and that the Forest Boot training camp was supposed to be a little preview of what they could expect. After the training camp was attacked, the mission to rescue Bakugo, All Might's fight with the villain in Kamino, and his subsequent retirement, it was finally time to get things moving again. The teachers told the students that they'd spend the next week training for the upcoming Provisional Hero License exam, and thus, they'd have to use whatever training they had beforehand to impress everyone at the exam. Most students freaked out, although Izuku and Itsuka had come to an agreement the afternoon the announcement was made. They'd meet up in Saturday at the entrance to go shopping for some training equipment, tutorial videos on martial arts, some water bottles and supplements for their training. If the Provisional Hero License exam was going to be as tough as their teachers made it sound like, then they'd have to step it up on their training to be up to standard. Izuku met Itsuka outside the gates at UA, and they waved at each other upon seeing each other. Hi, Itsuka. Hey, Izuku. Ready to go? Izuku nodded. Yeah, I am. Itsuka nodded before walking to the nearest mall while holding Izuku's hand. So, this has been one hell of a week, hasn't it? Izuku chuckles. You can say that again. I don't think I've ever seen Mr. Aizawa so strict before. It's like he's a bodyguard half of the time. Itsuka giggles. You're right. Vlad King is also doubling down on the safety measures. Man, everyone's pretty scared, aren't they? Izuku shrugs. Can't really say I blame them. The greatest hero of our time did retire not too long ago. Itsuka looks back at the school gate for a second. Yeah, but did they really have to go all out on the security measures? I mean, I can understand the dorm rooms and the blinded gates, but do we really have to schedule every time we go out of the school as well? Izuku shrugs again. I guess that's just in case something happens. If a student goes missing, then the security staff will have an easier time sorting out the students who remained at the dorms and those who went out. That way, a search and rescue operation will be more effective since the individual who got lost can be traced in. Itsuka gives Izuku a peck on the cheek to prevent him from rambling. You're quite the chatterbox sometimes, aren't you, Izuku? Izuku rubs his head sheepishly. Hey, well. Itsuka chuckles and gives Izuku's hand a gentle squeeze. That's okay. That's who you are and I wouldn't have you any other way. Izuku blushes. Thanks, Itsuka. You know, for someone with a heart of stone you sure are sweet when you want to be. Itsuka's face reddens and she lets go of Izuku's hand to cross her arms. Well, maybe so, but... Izuku giggles and gives Itsuka a peck on her cheek to calm her down. But that's something I really like about you. Itsuka huffs with a smile. You know, you're lucky we get along so well, Izuku. Otherwise I'd beat that pretty face of yours into mush. Izuku playfully pouts at Itsuka. Oh come on, Itsuka. Would you really hit me? Itsuka pushes Izuku away playfully. Only if you keep being so cheeky, you sly little. Izuku giggles before holding Itsuka's hand again. Nah, I think I can hold my own pretty well after all the training we've done together, Itsuka. Itsuka rolls her eyes with a smile. You better, Izuku. Otherwise who will I beat at the gym if you're gone? Izuku smirks. You say that yet I've been winning the last few sparring matches we've had. Itsuka giggles before smirking back at Izuku. Yeah, keep telling yourself that, you stubborn mule. Next time we fight I might even let you win. Not. The couple share a couple of laughs before continuing on their path peacefully. It felt weird for both of them to be this forward with each other despite not being in an actual relationship. And yet, it felt natural for some reason. Neither of them knew what to think of the current state of their relationship. They were friends, sure, but they were acting a bit more direct and touchy to be just friends. It would be hard to keep pretending that this friendship wasn't anything else if things kept going like this. Eventually, the pair reached a split path, which snapped them out of their thoughts. Itsuka immediately went for a lonely alleyway, to which Izuku blinked in confusion. Itsuka, where are you going? Itsuka looked back at Izuku with the same confused expression. Well, to the mall like we agreed, why? Izuku raised an eyebrow. Really? The mall is this way? Itsuka nods. Yup, pretty sure it is. I've lived here my whole life and I can safely say the mall is this way. Izuku's eyes widen slightly. You've lived here in Musudafu, Itsuka. Itsuka nods again. Yeah, it's a pretty lovely city, isn't it? Izuku nods. Yeah, but, I'm just a bit surprised. Itsuka is the one to raise an eyebrow now. Why are you surprised about it, Izuku? Izuku looks at Itsuka with wide eyes. I've also lived here in Musudafu since forever, Itsuka. Itsuka's eyes widen so much they look like plates. Really? Izuku, that's, wow, what are the odds? But if that's the case, then how come I've never seen you before? Izuku rubs his chin in thought. I don't know. Musudafu isn't the biggest city, so I'm surprised to have never seen you before. Itsuka shrugs. Either way, it's like, what, a chance of 1 in a million that we both grew up here or what? Izuku nods with a small smile. Yeah, it is. Izuku looks at the alley behind Itsuka. So, are you sure this is the correct path? Itsuka nods with a small smile. Yup, I'm pretty used to walking down alleys like these, Izuku. I know my way around town. Izuku sighs. If you say so. Izuku follows Itsuka through the alley. The alley is quite dark and soundless. Plus, the fact that the only two people in it were Itsuka and Izuku gave a certain feeling of suspense to Izuku, although Itsuka looked perfectly fine for some reason. Izuku whispers to Itsuka, "Itsuka, did you really used to walk through alleys like this one?" Itsuka looks back at Izuku and answers in her usual cheery tone. "Yup." Izuku looks a bit perplexed. There was something wrong about this entire situation. Then, the air stagnated. Itsuka felt the mood change as well, so she stopped dead in her tracks. Izuku stands beside Itsuka, ready to use his quirk if something were to happen. Itsuka nods. "I know, I feel it too." Izuku puts his back against Itsuka's back. Did this always happen when you walked through here?" Itsuka does the same in case something were to pop up out of nowhere. "No, this alleyway is one of the safest in the entire city. I've walked through here since I was a kid. Something is very wrong." Then, a shadow dashes past the duo at breakneck speed. Izuku and Itsuka look to the side to find out that the shadow is gone. "What was that?" asks Izuku in a panicked state. The same shadow dashes past the duo yet again. Itsuka clenches her teeth in anticipation. "Be ready, Izuku." Then, Izuku sees the shadow directly in front of him approaching him at a great speed. Izuku clenches his fist and activates One for All at 5% on instinct. California. Once the shadow is close enough, Izuku punches upwards. SMAAASH. The shadow is punched, and a figure is sent flying once Izuku's punch connects. Itsuka and Izuku look towards the figure who is currently laying on the ground a few feet away from them. Izuku looks at the figure expectantly. "Who is that?" The figure groans and gets on her feet. Itsuka takes a closer look and squints her eyes. Then, recognition flashes across Itsuka's face, and she steps back out of shock. "What the? No, it can't be." Izuku looks at Itsuka with a concerned expression. "Do you recognize them, Itsuka?" "Of course she recognizes me." At the sound of a female voice coming from the figure, Izuku looks at them with an expectant gaze. He takes in every detail about her. The girl is tall, has purple eyes, has short purple hair kept by a purple accessory, a sleek and form-fitting bodysuit in deep shades of purple and black adorned with intricate patterns and designs inspired by traditional Japanese motifs, a flowing, knee-length cloak in a rich crimson color, sturdy yet lightweight boots in a dark hue featuring subtle accents of silver and a belt around her waist with a sash keeping a sword. The girl almost looked like an elegant ninja, but she did not look pleased after being punched in the stomach. Itsuka gasps in surprise. "No, it can't be Misa." Izuku looks at the purple-haired girl, whose name apparently is Misa, with a confused expression. Misa rubs her stomach with a small frown. At least you remember my name, Itsuka." Izuku looks back and forth between the two girls confusedly. "Wait, you two know each other?" Misa wastes no time before dashing at the couple again. Izuku and Itsuka react defensively by activating their quirks on instinct, but before they know it, the purple-haired girl disappears. Itsuka's eyes fill with a tint of recognition and she looks behind, panicked. "Izuku, behind." Itsuka's warning proves to be too slow, as the girl immediately appears behind the pair and draws her sword, making a small cut on Izuku's waist. Although he was able to dodge a fatal blow, Izuku grunts. "Ah, what's her deal?" Misa's frown hardens. "I am not in search of a quarrel with you, Izuku Midoriya. Leave this alleyway and never look back. Otherwise, I'll have to resort to drastical measures to make sure you don't pose a threat." Izuku makes a stand with a pained smile. "Never." Then, the couple hear another female voice behind them. "Then I guess we'll have to roast you alive, punk." Itsuka's brain racks with nostalgia and she tackles Izuku to the side on instinct before a huge pile of fire engulfs him. Izuku looks to the place the fire had come from and sees another figure standing with a menacing pose. Itsuka squints her eyes before opening them wide at the recognition of another person she knew. "Haruka, you too." Izuku takes in the appearance of the new combatant. The girl is short, has long pink hair with red accessories holding her pigtails, pink eyes. She was wearing a pink jacket, a white shirt with doodles of a cat drawn on it, a couple of shorts, pink sneakers and many bandages around her knuckles and knees. The girl was holding her right arm to her shoulder's height, and a bright orange flame on her hand illuminated her annoyed-looking face. Izuku quickly shakes off the thoughts of Itsuka knowing the two girls to think of a plan. So far, he's in the middle of a fight with two girls who clearly had hostile intentions. The pink-haired girl called Haruka had a fire quirk by the looks of it, and the way the purple-haired girl's quirk worked was still a mystery. What to do? Before Izuku could finish his train of thoughts, a third person entered the alleyway, walking in a more relaxed and easygoing manner. Izuku looked to the side and saw a girl with long blonde hair that reached her shoulders. The girl had blue eyes and a red bow on the right side of her head, adorning her adorable face. She was wearing red sneakers, yellow leggings and a blue tank top. Judging by the way the girl looked, walked and the way she was smiling, she seemed a bit more calm than the other two. Itsuka thought she couldn't be more surprised, but her jaw practically dropped to the floor upon noticing the cheerful-looking girl. What the foo, Hikari? Don't tell me, is Hinoka in this too? Did she put you up to this? The girl giggled before looking at the couple with a smile. Nope, she couldn't come, so it's just us for now, silly. Izuku and Itsuka get to their feet, looking at the three girls with expectancy and adrenaline pumping through their bodies. What did they want? The girl whose name was Hikari nodded to her teammates, and they reluctantly walked to her side with skeptical expressions. Hikari bows to Izuku before speaking. Sorry about that. These two can get real sassy if they don't fight as soon as they spot someone new. The pink-haired girl whose name is Haruka scoffs and crosses her arms. Hey, that's not true. I can contain myself. Itsuka steps in front of Izuku defensively. What do you three want? I think I made my stance pretty clear when we last spoke. Hikari rolls her eyes. Oh come on, Itsuka. Don't be such a stranger, old buddy. It's been so long since you came home. Izuku stands beside Itsuka with a calm yet guarded expression, ready to defend himself if something were to happen. Excuse me, I don't think I understand what's going on. Do you know Itsuka by any chance? Itsuka visibly cringes. Hikari giggles. Why, of course we know her. We used to be friends, after all. Izuku's eyes widen in surprise. What, you? But, since when? The purple-haired girl steps in with a serious and firm expression. We have known Itsuka since we were kids. Our business is with her and her alone, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku's expression falls a bit. So they knew who he was, probably due to the sports festival. Right, well, what do you want with her? The pink-haired girl steps forward with a glare. None of your business, punk. Leave or we'll have to make. The blonde girl covers Haruka's mouth and smiles sheepishly. Ah ha ha, don't listen to her, she's just a little fired up as usual. But, the faint cheerful glow on Hikari's eyes falls briefly, and Izuku immediately feels the entire air around the girl change, as if he was talking to someone completely different. She's right on one thing. We came here looking for Itsuka and Itsuka only, Midoriya. You don't have to be a part of this, you know. Leave Itsu to us and we'll leave peacefully. You could leave and forget any of this ever happened. Itsuka and Izuku's expressions harden. They weren't about to let the other get hurt, not after everything they've been through together. Itsuka and Izuku activate their quirks and take on fighting stances. Izuku speaks in a low, yet serious and threatening tone. I'm not leaving Itsuka. If you want me to leave her to you, make me. As if on instinct, the three girls take Izuku's words as defiance to their wishes, and they adopt fighting stances as well. Silence falls upon the alleyway. Both sides now know that confrontation is inevitable. The three girls look at Itsuka with resentful glares and give Izuku occasional pitied glances. On his part, Izuku looks at the girls with indignation. He didn't know who these girls were or what they wanted with Itsuka, but their actions made it clear to him that they were willing to do anything to get to her. Izuku wouldn't let that happen. He'd stand his ground for Itsuka, no matter what. Meanwhile, Itsuka looks at her former friends with irritation. Misa, Haruka, Hikari and the absent Hinoka. Itsuka could already predict what the girls wanted, and she wasn't gonna budge. Itsuka quickly thought of a plan to deal with their current opponents. It was more of a concept rather than an actual plan, but it'd have to do for the moment. Itsuka whispers to Izuku, "You take care of the girl with pink hair. I'll handle the other two. Always keep an eye out for the blondie just in case." Izuku nods. "Got it." Hikari regains the glow on her eyes, and she smiles brightly at her two friends. "Let's show them that we're serious, girls." The three girls charge at Izuku and Itsuka in unison. Izuku takes on the pink-haired girl known as Haruka, launching a quick punch towards her. The girl also punches Izuku head-on, and their fists collide. "Ah, she's stronger than she looks, and my waist hurts," thinks Izuku, trying to get his mind off the burning sensation on his bleeding waist. The pink-haired girl jumps back and extends her hand. Several fireballs come out of her hands and fly at Izuku at high speeds. Izuku barely dodges the fireballs. Looks like her quirk is similar to Todoroki's. But her fire seems hotter and more intense. "Watch your back, broccoli boy." Izuku looks to the side and sees the blonde girl about to attack him with an aerial kick. Izuku dodges the incoming kick before jumping back in order to avoid a barrage of fire being sent his way. They're not throwing random attacks. They must have worked together before. Izuku attempts to throw a punch to the blonde girl only to not find her anywhere. What? She was just here. She must be some sort of hit-and-run fighter. The pink-haired girl shouts at Izuku. "Oi, don't ignore me, punkass." Izuku looks at the girl and barely manages to block a fiery punch aimed to his face. And by the looks of it, this girl must be a direct fighter. Meanwhile, Itsuka enlarges her fists and dashes at the purple-haired girl, who activates her quirk and sends multiple shadow tendrils from her own shadow towards Itsuka. Itsuka groans. Still relying on these things, Misa. Itsuka jumps over the tendrils and attempts to strike Misa down with her enlarged fist on impact. Itsuka's attack misses as the purple-haired girl jumps backwards elegantly. "You're one to talk, Itsuka. You're not much different from last time." Itsuka dashes at Misa with her enlarged fists. "I've grown. I'm better than how I was back then." Then, Itsuka is sent to the side by a kick from the blonde girl, who glares at her. "Well, aren't you a liar?" Itsuka stumbles to her feet, glaring back at her former friends. "Don't call me a liar. It's the truth." Hikari scoffs. "Right. Then why did you drag some boy into our stuff, huh?" Hikari launches a barrage of swift kicks at Itsuka, who blocks them. Itsuka grits her teeth while blocking the onslaught of kicks sent her way. "He had nothing to do with this. We were just going to the mall. It's not his fault that you're all a bunch of." Itsuka freezes once she feels multiple tendrils of darkness wrap around her body, locking her in place. Itsuka looks at Misa, who has her hand outstretched and a cold glare in her features. "And now, because of you, we'll be forced to hurt him as well, Itsuka. You always hurt someone in the end, don't you?" Hikari smiles. "Darn right." Hikari kicks Itsuka's immobilized body, and Itsuka coughs aggressively. Itsuka's mind drifts to a corner of her memories she thought she had left behind. "Get up, man hands." "What? Don't tell me you can't get up, clumsy claws. Show us what you've got, monster mitts." Izuku looks at Itsuka and sees that Itsuka is currently being attacked mercilessly while she's immobilized. "Itsuka." Izuku tries to rush to her side, but Haruka steps in his way with a grin. "You're done for, chum." The girl tries to punch Izuku again, but Izuku remembers a similar situation he had gone through with Itsuka at his training sessions with her. Izuku blocks the incoming fist with one hand and grabs Haruka's elbow with the other. "Come on. Just like Itsuka taught you. Grab 2 points, spin and..." Izuku slams Haruka to a nearby wall with a loud thud. "Smaaaash." The pink-haired girl cries put in pain. "Ack." The blonde girl looks to the side and steps away from Itsuka to help her comrade. "Hey, leave her alone, meanie." Izuku looks back and sees that Hikari is about to pounce on him with a high jump, so he fixates his gaze upwards. "I got it. When she's close, I'll..." Izuku's eyes widen in surprise when he suddenly sees the blonde girl in front of his face, smirking. Surprise. Hikari knees Izuku in the waist, just below his fresh cut. Izuku grunts and clutches his waist in pain. "Ugh." Hikari proceeds to grab Izuku's arms and pin them to his sides. Haruka. Now. The pink-haired girl gets up and glares at the now immobilized Izuku, activating her quirk. You'll pay for that. How? I thought she was above me. How did she move so fast? Izuku's train of thoughts is abruptly interrupted upon feeling a punch to his chest by the now enraged Haruka. Ah. Itsuka looks at Izuku with panic and fear strewn across her face. Izuku. Misa scoffs. I wished it didn't have to come to this, but you left us no choice, Itsuka. Itsuka clenches her teeth. You little sacks of. Misa delivers a swift kick to Itsuka's stomach, shutting her up. Oh, hush. Don't feel so surprised, Itsuka. This is but a fraction of the pain you made us feel. Itsuka coughs and tries to free herself unsuccessfully. There's more to it and you all know it. Misa glares at Itsuka. Just shut up. Misa kicks Itsuka again, and her mind goes back to that same corner again. Huh, who are you and why are you defending Hands of all people? That's mean. Stop hurting her. Look, someone's standing up for lumber fists. Oh, really? Then let's show 'em and Sasquatch fists their places on the world. Itsuka curses under her breath. Damn it, why am I remembering this now? Itsuka lifts her gaze to look at Izuku, who is being pummeled by Haruka while Hikari holds him to the wall. Hikari looks back at Itsuka with a smile. Don't look at us like that, Itsuka. You were the one to blame for all of this. Haruka stops punching Izuku briefly to look at Itsuka with a smirk. Yeah, you're a weakling like this guy here. You really have become soft. Itsuka looks down again. The pain she feels on her body won't let her move against her restraints, and there was really no point in doing it. Her former friends were right. She was nowhere near as good as Yaoyorozu, and she was way far behind everyone else, just like she always suspected. No one would ever take her seriously, not even her former friends were taking her seriously at this instant. She was weak and unable to do anything for anyone. Too pathetic to stand out at the sports festival. Not good enough to get an internship with one of the better pro heroes. Too stupid and slow to save Uraraka at the forest training camp. Too weak to save Izuku right now. Izuku lifts his gaze to look at Itsuka with a pained expression. Itsuka. Everyone looks at Izuku, including Itsuka. Izuku speaks in a pained tone, yet with a small bloodied smile. You're not weak. You're one of the most strong and capable people I know. You were good enough to make me open my heart to you. You were good enough to take care of everyone at your class. You were good enough to shine on your own. Itsuka's eyes widen at Izuku's statements. Izuku looks at Itsuka with tears in the corners of his eyes. You're not weak. You were Itsuka Kendo, and I believe in you. Itsuka feels her heart stop for a moment. Her mind goes back to the same corner one last time. Are you okay? Why yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you so much. No problem. Don't listen to them. But they called me names and made fun of my quirk. I think your quirk is amazing. You can do awesome stuff with it. Really? Yeah, I believe you can. Itsuka feels like tearing up. Those words had impacted her very soul. I believe in you. Haruka rolls her eyes. Boring. How about you shut up? Haruka punches Izuku one more time. Itsuka feels all sense of self-restraint be erased from her brain. In one swift motion, Itsuka enlarges her fists and spins on place, getting rid of the shadow tendrils around her body. Misa gasps. Oh my. Before Misa could react, Itsuka enlarges her fists and claps her hands on Misa's body, making her feel pain throughout her entire body and fall on the floor unconscious. Haruka, Hikari and even Izuku gasp at Itsuka's sudden burst of energy, and Hikari lets go of Izuku unconsciously. Itsuka dashes at the two girls with murderous intent. Haruka tries to send fireballs at Itsuka to at least slow her down, but Itsuka doesn't care. Itsuka enlarges her right fist and puts it in front of her body to block the incoming fireballs before striking Haruka with her left fist, enlarging it right at the moment of the impact for maximum damage. The pink-haired girl clenches her teeth in pain before falling down on the ground, severely hurt. Itsuka looks to the side, and notices that the blonde girl is missing. Hikari. Then, a sound echoes from the end of the alley. The blonde girl is suddenly standing there with both of her comrades on her arms. Darn it, Itsuka, why did you have to go and make everything so difficult, huh? Itsuka growls at the blonde girl. Shut up and fight me. This isn't over, Itsuka. Hikari snarls before leaving the alley in a hurry with her friends on her arms. Izuku places his hand on Itsuka's shoulder to prevent her from chasing down the blonde girl. Itsuka, calm down. Itsuka looks at Izuku in the same anger-induced state for some moments before starting to calm down. I'm so sorry, Izuku. Izuku smiles softly at Itsuka. Why are you apologizing? Before Izuku could react, Itsuka hugs him tightly, burying her face on the crook of his neck to not let him see her cry silently. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Izuku is surprised for a moment, but he quickly embraces Itsuka in the hug, rubbing her back to bring her some comfort. There, it's okay. Itsuka stays in Izuku's arms for some time, basking in the warmth of his body and the soothing sensations of his hand on her back. After some minutes pass, Itsuka finally lifts her gaze to look at Izuku with a small, teary-eyed smile. Thanks, Izuku. I really needed that. Izuku smiles. No problem, Itsuka. How do you feel? Itsuka sniffs back the remaining tears on her eyes. I feel better, but really tired. What about you? Izuku rubs his stomach. A bit roughed up and still bleeding. Thank goodness it was a small cut. Itsuka looks at Izuku's waist in concern. Oh no, we have to take care of that. Izuku giggles. We can go to the mall and take care of it there, Itsuka. It's not very big or noticeable. If I tuck my shirt no one will notice. Itsuka looks at Izuku with worried eyes. Are you sure? Izuku nods. Yeah, plus, you need to rest too. The couple had gone to the mall as they had originally planned, although the original plan was the last thing on their minds at the moment. Izuku had bought a bandage to cover his injury while Itsuka waited for him in the food area, resting from her violent outburst. By the time Izuku had returned to the table Itsuka was at, Itsuka had ordered a small burger to try to forget about the events that just transpired, though she had just been staring at it the whole time Izuku was out. Izuku sat beside Itsuka and looked at her with a worried expression. I'm back, Itsuka. Itsuka looked at Izuku briefly before staring at her food again. Great. Do you wanna, perhaps, talk about it? Itsuka groans. I'll have to do so at some point, won't I? Izuku nods. Yeah, but we can postpone it if you want. I know it must be pretty difficult for you if you really were friends before. Itsuka sighs. Well, might as well get it over with now, huh? Izuku shakes his head. We don't have to talk about it right now if you're not comfortable, Itsuka. Itsuka smiles faintly. You've been open to me, Izuku. It's only fair that I open up to you too. Izuku nods again. If that's what you want. Itsuka looks at Izuku with a concerned expression. Izuku, before I tell you what I'm gonna tell you, can you promise me that you won't be mad? Or at least that you'll try to understand? Izuku doesn't hesitate. Sure. Go ahead, Itsuka. Itsuka leans on the table, crossing her arms. Those girls, well, they were my friends at some point. I've known them since I was a kid. Izuku looks at Itsuka, worried for her. Yeah, that's what that blonde girl said. Itsuka looks down. I met them because I was angry at the world back in the day, Izuku. Izuku raises an eyebrow in concern. Huh, what do you mean? Itsuka looks at her food thoughtfully. You see, my parents are always too busy to spend time with me. I love them and I know they love me, but I've always felt alone, unwanted, rejected. Things just got worse when my little brother arrived. I love Suzu, but it felt like my parents wanted me to be a babysitter for him. Izuku looks down solemnly. He knew that feeling of loneliness all too well. Back when he was quirkless he never had a single real friend, since everyone just turned their backs on him upon discovering his quirklessness. Plus, The fact that my quirk is too goofy to be taken seriously didn't help my mental state at the time whatsoever. I felt alone all the time. Suzu was too young to be real company. I was harassed by many people because of my quirk. Until Izuku looks at Itsuka sadly, wanting to comfort her but opting to let her finish her story first. Itsuka smiles faintly. Someone stood up for me. I don't remember their face or voice very well, but I'll never forget their kind words. They said they believed in me. Izuku smiles. Oh, what he would have given to have someone say that to him in his quirkless middle school days. It was nice to see that Itsuka at least had someone say that to her. That day I swore I'd be stronger. I swore I'd live up to be someone people looked up to. Izuku's smile widens. You already are, Itsuka. Itsuka's smile turns into a sad and remorseful expression. The story doesn't end there, Izuku. Izuku's smile turns into a concerned frown. Oh, sorry. Itsuka sighs. Despite my promise, the harassment I suffered from those people didn't stop. I felt my anger rise. I felt like I started to hate. I felt like I had no place to turn to. So I began to look for some way to release all my anger and hate. Izuku feels a twinge of surprise. The thought of Itsuka having so much hate on her soul was one that had never crossed his mind. She always seemed so composed. That's when I met the girls outside my elementary school one day. Misa, Haruka, Hikari and Hinoka. They were a bunch of poor girls on the streets with no place to call home when I met them. We spoke to each other when a coin fell off my pocket and Haruka tried to steal it from me. We started to yell at each other and the argument ended up in a physical fight between me and Haruka. No one won, but we all had a laugh at how awful we were at fighting. We became friends and decided to form a little martial arts club to grow stronger together. We called it the Akita Hoshi Club, since we all felt like fallen stars at that moment. Izuku smiles softly. Well, at least you found a group of people who understood you, Itsuka. I'm happy for you. Itsuka sighs again and looks at the floor sadly. You shouldn't be, Izuku. We hated everyone. All we did in the club was feel badass, steal from people, get into fights with smaller boys or girls, drink sodas while walking around town, and talking trash about the world and its society. That caught Izuku by surprise. What, Itsuka, was that club a gang in formation? Were you really part of a gang? Itsuka groans and closes her eyes, cringing at herself. Izuku, that was a long time ago. We were dumb kiddos, so of course we weren't a gang. We were all too young, unexperienced and frail to be taken seriously. Plus, I was a stupid kid and did a lot of dumb shit I regret now. I mean, hell, sometimes I left Suzu home alone just to spend another day with the girls, stealing and fighting whoever crossed our path. Izuku looks at Itsuka in genuine disbelief. This was something he certainly did not expect from Itsuka of all people. And yet, he felt like he saw where Itsuka was coming from. She was angry at the world for giving her a goofy-looking quirk, she was bullied for it, she was alone. It probably wasn't so far-fetched to think that Itsuka might have resorted to immoral activities to release her pent-up frustrations and hate against the world. Izuku looks at Itsuka with a softer gaze. I think I get it, Itsuka. I guess I'm just surprised. The Akita Hoshi Club was a phase of my life I'm not proud of nowadays, but my younger self felt really happy with it. I guess we were all a bunch of troubled girls that looked for a place to belong to, or a purpose, or company, or understanding. Whatever it was, we felt happy back then. So, what happened? Itsuka looks away. One day, the girls took things too far. Izuku freezes in place. How so? The girls decided that our next objective was to break into a house that didn't seem vigilated to steal whatever we could find. We thought the house was unguarded and empty, but in reality, an old man was watching TV inside. Once we were in the living room, we stood in front of him in shock, wondering what went wrong with the plan. The old man saw our intentions, and he had a heart attack. Izuku's eyes widen again. I felt like fainting, screaming, crying. The old man was laying on the couch, clutching his chest in pain. And my friends, they immediately ran around the house to find whatever valuable objects they could find. Izuku felt a pang of anger surge within him, but he chose to stay silent for now. I tried to get the girls to stop, but they wouldn't listen to me. I eventually had to shout at them to get their attention, but they were firm on their intentions. We argued and shouted at each other, but I couldn't get them to change their minds. They said that society hadn't given them anything, so they wouldn't give anything back to it. Then, I couldn't contain my frustration anymore. I told them that I was leaving the club permanently. They simply stormed off with the house's most valuable items while I remained there, looking for a way to help the old man. Izuku felt a bittersweet sensation in his chest. He was proud of Itsuka for making the right choice, yet he also saw where the girls were coming from. It appeared that their hatred for society had clouded their judgment, and it had completely covered up their sense of empathy and morality at that moment. I called emergencies, and the old man was taken to the hospital in time. I went to see him because I couldn't live with my guilt. And Izuku noticed the pause Itsuka made. Izuku looked at Itsuka and noticed that there were some tears falling from her eyes. A younger Itsuka entered the old man's room at the hospital, feeling like her heart would explode at any moment. The old man was laying on the bed, surrounded by many people. Itsuka didn't have the courage to look up at them. If they were his family, how could she excuse herself for what she did? Itsuka made her way to the man's bed, looking down all the way. She didn't know how the people were looking at her, but she could feel their judging stares and disappointed looks. The old man speaks in a weak, yet warm and comforting tone. "Ah, is it you? Are you one of the girls that broke into our house?" Itsuka feels a stab of guilt rip her heart apart. She responds, looking even more ashamed of herself. "Why yes, mister. I see. And what were you doing?" Itsuka gulps. We were trying to steal stuff to sell." "Oh, in that case, would you like it if we invited you to eat at our house sometime so you don't have to resort to that?" Itsuka looks up at the old man in shock. It was then that she saw that his expression didn't harbor any kind of resentment or hard feelings against her, but rather, the old man was smiling warmly at her. Itsuka replied, full of shame and guilt. "What, you'd do that for me?" The old man chuckles weakly. "Sure, I don't know what happened to you to make you resort to stealing. But you must have done it because you needed it, right?" Itsuka feels like crying. The old man was wrong. She didn't need to steal in order to survive. She had a place to call home, parents to turn to, a brother to take care of and money to subsist. The only reason she'd tagged along with the girls was because she felt angry at the world for her treatment. Itsuka looks to the people surrounding her, and she sees that no one is expressing anger or disappointment. Everyone was giving her warm and understanding looks. Were they just good people? Was she about to steal from people who did absolutely nothing wrong? God, what was wrong with her? Itsuka clutches her chest, not being able to stand upright from her guilt and shame. I. The old man opens his arms. "Come here, little girl. You're not alone." Itsuka doesn't hesitate before hugging the old man tightly, crying and sobbing loudly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm awful. I'm horrible. I'm a bad person." The old man rubs the back of Itsuka's head softly. "You're not a bad person. No one truly is. We're all just trying to cope with our own problems. If you ever feel alone, come and have dinner with us sometime." Itsuka looks up at the old man with tears streaming down her cheeks. But I'm a bad person. Why would you do that for me?" The old man smiles warmly. "Because I believe in you, little girl. You're way too young to call yourself a bad person. Even if you're a little misguided now, you're still on time to take a better path. We all believe in you, and we know you'll get to wherever you want to if you just try." Itsuka goes back to sobbing into the old man's chest, crying even louder when she feels the rest of the people in the room hug her softly as well. Izuku felt moved by that, and he felt like tearing up as well. I fully left the club after that. I promised myself that I would become a hero that people would look up to, a hero strong enough to take care of myself and everyone else. A hero that can be taken seriously, a hero who can be there for the people who need it, like I did when I was getting bullied and like the old man when we broke into his house. A hero that would be famous for building her own path with her own hands. Izuku wiped the tears on his eyes and wrapped his arms around Itsuka. You already are, Itsuka. You already are. Itsuka sniffed back some tears and hugged Izuku tightly, not wanting to let go. I'm not, Izuku. I know I'm not, but I hope I can get there eventually. Izuku lets go of Itsuka while smiling at her. So, I guess they didn't take your retirement too well. Itsuka sighs. No, they didn't. The reason I know my way around town is because I was paranoid for a long time about them, Izuku. I didn't want to bump into them again, so I changed my path home frequently. I took different streets, alleys, avenues and means of transport every day. At one point I stopped doing it because I thought they'd let bygones be bygones. I should have known they'd be back. And now they hurt you because of me. Izuku puts his hand around Itsuka's shoulder to reassure her. Itsuka, this isn't your fault. Although, I'm curious, what did they expect to gain out of this whole thing? Itsuka groans. They want me back in the club. They tried to talk me into joining the club again a week after I left. I didn't think they'd still want me there. Izuku shakes his head in disbelief. I guess they miss you more than you think. Itsuka pushes Izuku away a little bit to stare into his eyes. There's no way in hell I'm coming back. They hurt you, Izuku. I'm not going back there and that's final. A few moments of silence pass. Izuku smiles, trying to lighten up the mood. Well, you sure showed them what you're made of, Itsuka. I'm sure they'll think twice before messing with you again after that. Itsuka looks away. I really went all out back there, didn't I? I'm sorry, Izuku. I shouldn't have done that. Now they probably hate us even more. Izuku's smile grows. But still, you were amazing. You took on 3 talented fighters on your own. Itsuka smiles faintly. Hey, I just couldn't stand seeing you get hurt, Izuku. I don't know if I'm strong enough to battle them yet, but I didn't care at the moment. My body just moved on its own. You were a lot more important to me than you think, dummy. Izuku giggles. Thanks, Itsuka. I'm sure Haruki and her gang won't get in our way for some time. Hikari. Her name is Hikari. She was my best friend back then. Izuku raises an eyebrow. You still remember them after all this time, don't you? Itsuka giggles. Well, obviously. They were my close friends at one point. I'd never forget about them. Izuku leans his head on Itsuka's shoulder to comfort her some more. Tell me more about them, Itsuka. Itsuka chuckles. Well, the blonde one is called Hikari, and she's the heart and soul of the club. She's the second in command and her quirk is called photic. She has control over all kinds of lights in a large area, and she's able to create illusions based on her use of the lights around her or her opponents. Her fighting style is a pretty weird one, with her being more of an agile acrobat than a direct fighter. She mostly uses hit-and-run tactics and brings support to the other fighters. Her quirk reflects her personality, since she always brightens up everyone's day and is super cheerful most of the time, but when she's sad or serious she's almost unapproachable. Wow, so that's why she moved so fast. Better remember to write it down later. Thinks Izuku to himself. And the rest? Itsuka puts her finger on her chin in thought. Well. The girl with pink hair is called Haruka, and her quirk is called Ignis Inferno. She can create intense bursts of flames in a short range and control them to her will at the cost of some of her oxygen being drained. She can engulf her own body in fire, launch fireballs, create fire columns, make burning walls and more. She's a melee puncher, and she prefers to duke it out with more direct attacks. I don't know if it's because of her quirk or not, but she always seems to be angry. It's like she has a fiery temper that could go off at any second. Izuku chuckles. Seems like you had to deal with your own Kachan in your time, Itsuka. Itsuka chuckles. Now that I think about it, they'd get along well. What about the tall girl with the purple hair? Itsuka smiles. Ah, yes, Misa, our very own shrinking violet. Always formal and shy, but a talented expert on the inside. Her quirk is called Anima Tenebrae, and it gives her control over all shadows in a large area. She can engulf her body in shadows for sneak attacks, ensnare opponents with shadow tendrils, create shadowy constructs or illusions and increase the darkness in a small area. She prefers to wield a sword most of the time and attack using deceptive tactics similar to the ones ninjas used when ninjutsu was relevant. Izuku looks at his bandaged stomach briefly. She seems like a dangerous opponent. Itsuka nods. She is. She might come off as someone with no social skills whatsoever at first, but she's deadly if she puts her mind to it. Izuku nods. So, what about the last one? You said there were 4 of them, right? Itsuka sighs again. Yeah, Hinoka, the leader of the club. She has short brown hair kept in a small ponytail by a black ribbon. Her quirk is called psychosis, giving her the power to move things with her mind. She can also play with her opponent's mind with her quirk if her opponents are weak-minded. Out of every single one of us, Hinoka is the one that has never lost a fight, ever. I don't know what it is about her, but she's just perfect. If anyone's unbeatable, it's her. Izuku raises his eyebrows. Then, why wasn't she with the rest of the girls at the alley? Itsuka pushes Izuku away a little bit. I don't know, and that's what worries me the most. Hinoka has never been one to let loose ends. She's a mastermind, and if she ever finds herself at a disadvantage it will have been on purpose. Izuku widens his eyes. Is she really that smart? Itsuka looks at the table with a pensive expression. Yes, but this still doesn't make sense. There's no way she knew we were going to the mall today. And even if she did, she must have guessed that I would have said no to their proposal. Something's wrong. Izuku sighs and holds Itsuka's hand to snap her out of her reverie. We can worry about that later, Itsuka. I don't think they'll bother us again for some time. Itsuka leans against Izuku's body softly. I don't know, Izuku. Izuku giggles, trying to lighten up the mood again. Even if they do come back at some point, just go berserk on them again. Itsuka chuckles softly. Right, no one messes with you and gets away with it while I'm here. Izuku scoots closer to Itsuka. That sounds good to me. Itsuka's gaze falls briefly. Still, I wish I could have done something more back there. I could have talked to them. Izuku rubs Itsuka's shoulder reassuringly. Itsuka, don't think like that. I don't know if there's anything else you could have done. I mean, even if you did talk to them there's no guarantees that they would have listened. Plus, we were lucky that the fight was in that isolated alleyway. We're not allowed to use our quirks until we get our provisional her licenses, so. Then, Itsuka's eyes open wide. Holy crap, the exam. We totally forgot about it. Izuku looks at Itsuka with a small startled expression. Yeah, Itsuka, that's why we came here in the first PLA. Izuku, we have to hurry, said Itsuka, getting up from her seat and dragging Izuku behind her. Izuku pouts. But, your burger. No time. The mall could close any second now. Burger. No. In a place far from the mall, Hikari drops her friends on the floor while gasping for breath. A door opens, and a girl comes in. The girl is tall with short brown hair kept in a ponytail by a black ribbon. She wears a blue pleated skirt, a black open jacket, a green blouse, a golden necklace with a green gem, black knee-high thigh highs and black high-heeled boots. The girl steps in with a serious expression. Geez, were they really that much of a challenge to you, girls? Hikari pants while looking at her friend with an annoyed glare. You said that only Itsuka would be there, Hinoka. Hinoka smiles, crossing her arms. I did, and everything went according to our plan. Hikari huffs. What plan? Misa and Haruka are out cold and I could have been knocked out too. Hinoka smirks. But you didn't, Hikari. I knew you'd get out of there safe and sound with Haruka and Misa with your illusions. Plus, neither of them would have been able to do anything to you without their hero licenses. Hikari grunts. So you mean to tell me that you knew Itsuka would have company and yet you didn't tell us? Why, they sent us packing, Hinoka. Yes, they did, with all kinds of valuable information. We got a clear vision of what they're capable of at this moment of time while all they got were bruises and dust. It'll be of great help when Satoshi's plan comes into actio. What, Hinoka? You can't be serious. I know we all miss Itsuka, but Him and his gang. Surely you don't mean that we're gonna work with them. Hinoka rubs her head. Look, I know it's not ideal, but... Hikari groans. Hinoka, we can't do that. Satoshi and his gang are. Then, a male voice is heard from behind Hinoka. Me and my gang are what? The girls freeze in place. Hikari giggles nervously. Hee. You and your gang are powerful forces to be reckoned with. Good. I thought I heard someone talking trash about me and my gang. Hinoka turns around nervously. And no, we were just admiring the hard work you put into every single one of your plans, Satoshi. Whatever. Just keep it down, will you? You two are annoying me. The door closes, and the sound of footsteps fading away brings relief to the girls. Hinoka speaks in a nervous yet soft tone. Hikari, I know this isn't what you were expecting, but this benefits all of us. Hikari looks at Hinoka with a concerned expression. Maybe, but, really, there's got to be a better way to get Itsuka back. Honkoku looks away briefly. Don't get me wrong, Hikari. I don't like working with them either. I'm just doing what needs to be done. I swear none of us will get hurt again. Hikari sighs. I just hope you know what you're doing, Hinoka. The days after the provisional hero license exam were a mess in Japan. Due to the anxiety caused by All Might's retirement and the hero's new leader Endeavor, the media was appealing to the entirety of the hero society and preying on their fears. On the other spectrum, sensing the growing insecurity in the world, there are some suspicions that state that the outcasts who don't support heroes will rise up and take action because they think they will able to shape the way society behaves and organize amongst themselves. Organizations like the League of Villains would start to appear across the country if this turmoil kept growing. The lack of symbols was evident. All Might's reign had come to an end, which meant that the people now felt unsafe, unprotected, vulnerable. The fact that Endeavor was the new #1 didn't help either. Endeavor was no symbol of peace. If anything, he was a symbol of the decadent reputation of heroes and a testament to how rotten hero society was as a whole. Everyone compared him to All Might, and even if Endeavor was the #2 hero, he was nowhere near close enough to be considered a symbol like All Might was. The guy wasn't cuddly, his presence wasn't calming, and the difference in their expressions. All Might's smile brought tranquility to those he rescued. Endeavor's cold, hateful eyes made everyone uncomfortable. There was simply no comparison to be made. Endeavor solved the most cases, sure, but he had a bit of a temper and he had gone overboard on many occasions. All Might not only saved people, but he made everyone feel safe and secure. All Might was powerful, recognizable, unbeatable and incredibly skilled at his job. How could Endeavor compare to someone who simply bested him at everything? Many wannabe heroes decided that he simply couldn't. And so, with no symbol of peace in sight anymore, it suddenly was a free-for-all between heroes who wanted to rise in the ranks as fast as possible to see who could fill the void of power All Might had left behind. The villains were experiencing similar changes. All for One was a leader like no one ever was. He was a leader for those who had nothing, were selfish or simply had been left behind by this unfair society. The Lord of the Underworld had so much influence over so many people it was practically impossible to hide from him in Japan at one point. To villains across the country, seeing the symbol of fear being taken down by All Might had many meanings, and none were comforting. Much like the heroes, the villains had lost their most outstanding symbol. Another power vacuum was created when All for One was taken down, and they knew it. It was poetic in a way. Now that the greatest hero and the most fearsome villain were gone, the fight was passed on to the next generation to see who would rise to the top. Who would bring peace to this crumbling world and its corrupt society? Who would expose the truth of the frail hero world? Dark times were ahead, and most people knew it. People are not dumb, but most times, we'd rather live a happy lie than face the horrid truth. Nevertheless, some people were making the most out of their lives even if the outside world seemed unstable at the moment. For one, now that the forest training camp incident was behind everyone's minds, things were finally starting to look normal again. In the 1B dorm rooms, the students were having a blast. Setsuna had quickly arranged a hastily made party to celebrate the fact that everyone in Class B had successfully earned their hero license. The mood was lively and everyone was there. Even though Tetsu's lungs had taken quite the beating after being exposed to the poisonous gas for so long, he refused to let up on anything he used to do beforehand. He still trained regularly, he still ate whatever he felt like eating, and his enthusiastic tone hadn't diminished in the slightest. After the events on the camp, Abara was perturbed at the sight of her friends being taken down by gas and being on the run from a hideous Nomu, but Itsuka, Setsuna, Kanoko and Pony managed to snap her out of her perturbed state and open up to everyone again. Even Monoma seemed to be in a better mood for some reason. He had refused to talk to anyone after the forest training camp incident, but that changed after the provisional license exam. No one knew if it was related to Class A or not, but knowing him, it definitely was. No one seemed to mind at the moment, though. Every student from Class B was on the living room partying hard. Drinks were being spilled, songs were being played at max volume, and there wasn't nearly enough food for the occasion. If any teachers had noticed the celebration at the dorms, they hadn't interrupted to let the kids have their moment. Getting through the hero license exam was no easy feat, so the fact that the whole class had managed to pass was astonishing. The living room was quite the mess by now, and the students showed no signs of slowing down anytime soon. However, Itsuka wasn't paying attention to any of what was happening at the moment. Her gaze was fixated on her cell phone, and she had a goofy smile on her face. Izuku was a guy that had social media accounts, but rarely used them. The fact that he took time to post a photo of his newly acquired hero license was a shock to everyone that saw it, but it was a welcome surprise. Itsuka liked the photo and had spent some minutes staring at it, thinking to herself how Izuku must have looked like when he got it. Izuku must have looked so adorable. He must have been either jumping up and down in joy, staring at it with wide eyes for hours, or crying rivers of happy tears. Thought Itsuka to herself with a wide, goofy grin. It was then that Yui noticed the class president standing by herself in a corner of the room staring at her phone. Yui decided to approach Itsuka to at least make company. Itsuka notices Yui approaching, so she quickly closes the app and goes for the first thing that makes her look not suspicious. Yui takes a sip of her drink before staring at Itsuka with a blank expression. "Hey, Kendo." Itsuka smiles awkwardly at her friend. "Hey, Yui, what's up?" Yui takes another sip of her drink. "Nothing much. I just figured you'd like someone to talk to instead of spending more time alone staring at Midoriya's social media accounts." Itsuka blushes and fights off the need to groan. "Ah, that's not true, Yui. I wasn't doing anything of the sort." Yui keeps staring at Itsuka with a blank expression. "I saw it, Kendo. Plus, your phone is only showing advertisements of toys for pets. You obviously changed the app hastily just before I arrived." Itsuka tries to change the subject. "Well, aren't you conversational today? You're usually the most quiet one in the class, Yui." Yui shrugs. "I've been spending some time talking to Shoto. We've been practicing our social manners and how to get social hints and cues." Itsuka smiles devilishly. "Finally, time for some payback. Ooh, Shoto Todoroki, huh? Why, I wonder if you're not seeing him for other reasons." Yui takes another sip of her drink with the same blank expression. "Not that I know of." Itsuka grins. "Are you sure? Because you just called him by his first name." Yui shakes her head. "No, I did not." Itsuka raises an eyebrow. "Huh." Yui shrugs. "He said that's his hero name. As a fellow hero in training, I respect the simplicity." Itsuka mentally groans at her friend's lack of social awareness. "Darn it, Yui, why are you like this? It was my turn to tease someone and now it somehow got boring and awkward." Yui takes another sip of her drink. "Either way, he and I have been forcing ourselves to talk more." Itsuka smiles. "That's nice, Yui. I'm happy that you're making the most out of your time with him." The corners of Yui's mouth curve upwards a little bit, as if trying her best to smile. "Thanks, Kendo. It's also nice to see you getting so close to Midoriya." Itsuka rolls her eyes. "It's not that deep. I mean, he and I get along fine, that's all." Yui's faint smile disappears. "Is that so? Then, do you know him very well?" Itsuka raises an eyebrow at the sudden question. "What do you mean by that?" Yui takes another sip of her drink. I don't want him to give you any unpleasant surprises, Kendo. Itsuka smiles. Oh, there's no need to worry about that, Yui. Midoriya is a good guy. Yui nods. I know that, but I think you should really know more about him before you date him, Kendo. Itsuka groans. For the last time, Yui. Yui points behind Itsuka, to the window. Because if you don't, he might run off to do who knows what without you knowing about it or consenting to it. Itsuka looks behind her to see what Yui meant, and she was taken by surprise by the sight. On the road to the training grounds, Izuku was walking behind Bakugo. Izuku's head was hung low for some reason, as if he was either scared or ashamed of something. Meanwhile, Bakugo looked rather pensive and calm, although he still had a glint of anger in his eyes. Whatever was happening, Itsuka felt like it wouldn't be good news. Yui, can you take over for a bit? Yui nods. Sure. Itsuka nods. Right, I'll see you guys later. Save some cake and soda for me. Itsuka had easily followed Izuku and Bakugo to ground beta. It wasn't very hard due to the pair being deep in their own thoughts. By the time the pair had stopped, Itsuka decided to hide inside a nearby building to weigh her options. It was Izuku and Bakugo yet again. There was another topic Itsuka had always wanted to ask Izuku about, and that was his relationship with Bakugo, but it never seemed like quite the right time to talk about it. Somehow, it seemed like Bakugo couldn't stay away from Izuku. For all Itsuka knows, they definitely had some sort of backstory, mostly since Itsuka would never have imagined someone calling Bakugo Kachan, but she didn't really know anything besides that. All Itsuka had seen Bakugo do was act like he was the strongest in the world and shove Izuku to the side. It was really getting on her nerves, yet Izuku seemed to be fine with it for some reason. Itsuka hid behind a wall, taking occasional glances from a window beside her to the couple of boys, who were currently talking in front of a very disheveled-looking building. Why there of all places? Did that building have a special meaning to either of them? She couldn't hear much of what they were saying, but the conversation looked rather tense. Izuku looked very nervous, and Bakugo. Bakugo looked awfully serious and subdued, and that was somehow even more unsettling than seeing him angry or acting smug. Then, Bakugo stretched his arms while Izuku began to step back briefly. Itsuka was confused for a moment, but Izuku confirmed what was going on. Come on, Kachan, stop, this isn't smart. Bakugo simply propelled himself towards Izuku and extended his hand to set off an explosion upon impact. Izuku barely dodged the explosion, but his leg was slightly injured. It looked like they were about to fight. Itsuka couldn't believe it. They actually decided to do this the night of the provisional license exam. Did something happen, or did she miss something? Bakugo snarls and shouts, not getting Itsuka to hear him clearly. You know what's your problem. You're always overthinking things. Just fight me. Bakugo propels himself towards Izuku, and Izuku keeps dodging the continuous explosions. Itsuka keeps watching the fight, worried for Izuku, angry at Bakugo and torn on whether she should intervene or not. Izuku keeps trying to talk. We don't have to hurt each other. You were right to look up to All Might. I know how much he meant to you when we were growing. Bakugo launches himself at Izuku again, interrupting him. Izuku dodges and looks at Bakugo with a small frown, starting to feel frustrated. I told you to wait. Itsuka takes a look at Izuku's movements and notices that he's implementing moves she'd taught him on their training sessions. Although, Izuku seemed to be putting more effort and focus into his legs. Was this the so-called shoot style Izuku had mentioned once or twice before? Bakugo growls. Stop running. Come here and fight me. You. Bakugo propels himself towards Izuku again, and Izuku barely dodges. You were always right behind me. No matter how much I tried to get rid of you, you kept coming back. We both admired him, so why? Bakugo launches himself at Izuku again, but Izuku deflects Bakugo's arm before he could set another explosion off. Kachan, listen to me. However, Bakugo kicks Izuku in the chin. Bakugo's eyes were glowing red with anger. Why? Bakugo aims his arms towards Izuku, but Izuku kicks upwards, deflecting Bakugo's explosion into the air. Bakugo keeps shouting, "Tell me." Bakugo stumbles back and falls on his back. On instinct, Izuku deactivates One for All and goes over to him to extend his hand to him, offering help. "Are you okay?" Bakugo glares at Izuku, slapping his hand away. "Don't you dare worry about me." Itsuka has had enough. She lets out a deep sigh before walking to the door, wanting to scold the two boys for fighting like this after curfew. But then, Bakugo gets up while looking down to the floor angrily. "Attack me. Why won't you fight back? Why?" Bakugo's voice becomes wobbly and shaky, as if he's on the verge of a breakdown. "Why did I have to end up chasing after someone who has so far behind me?" Izuku and Itsuka stop on their tracks, their eyes widening at Bakugo's sudden display of raw emotions. Bakugo keeps looking down. "Why did a small fry like you get strong, and become the #1 hero's sidekick? His favorite. You got so much better. And I destroyed All Might." Izuku and Itsuka gasp. Bakugo looks at Izuku with tears in the corners of his eyes. "I admired him so much. But it's because of me that he lost his powers. It's just like that blonde idiot from the other class said. If I had been stronger, if I hadn't been kidnapped by villains, it wouldn't have happened. All Might knows it's my fault but he hasn't said anything. But everyone must know. I can't get it out of my head. It's like it's constantly playing on loop. So what the hell am I supposed to do?" Izuku and Itsuka take a moment to reflect on Bakugo's words. They know what he means. He must have been blaming himself for All Might's retirement, obsessing over it. Perhaps even more than Izuku did. However, one set of words caught Itsuka's attention. Bakugo said, "Just like that blonde idiot from the other class said." There were only 2 blondes in her class and only one of them had so much hatred in his soul for Class A to resort to those kinds of low blows. Now Monoma's sudden mood improvement made sense. Itsuka clenched her teeth in anger and indignation. Didn't Monoma know what Bakugo had gone through? Wasn't getting kidnapped by villains and seeing his idol retire enough? Did Monoma just hate Class A that much? One thing was clear, though. Once Itsuka got back, she'd give Monoma the ass-kicking of a lifetime for all the bullshit she had allowed him to get away with. Itsuka looked back to the boys, and noticed that Izuku was getting ready once again. Izuku stands his ground with a determined glare. "If we're doing this, I'm going all out. I refuse to be your punching bag, Kachan." Then, it all became clear to Itsuka. This fight wasn't what she originally thought was going to be. Right now, it didn't really matter who won or lost. Izuku and Itsuka were the only ones who knew how Bakugo felt. Perhaps this was one way for Bakugo to blow off steam. Bakugo immediately propelled himself towards Izuku again, and Izuku dodges yet again. However, Bakugo quickly propels himself behind Izuku and grabs him by the shirt, throwing him against a nearby lamp post. Izuku grunts as his back hits the hard metal. "Ah!" Bakugo snarls. "I thought you weren't gonna be my punching bag, Deku." Izuku smiles. "I'm not, but we're both faster. I guess we've both grown stronger." Bakugo launches himself at Izuku again. "What are you smiling at? I bet you got some plan up your sleeve. That's one of the things I hate the most about you." Bakugo sets off another explosion at Izuku's feet. Izuku barely dodges, but he takes most of the explosion in the chest. Bakugo snarls. "No matter how much I beat you up, you keep coming back. It's obvious you've always looked down on me, even when we were kids." Izuku lands on the ground with a flabbergasted expression. What? Bakugo glares at Izuku. "If you think you'll surpass me even with that new power of yours, you better think again, Deku." Izuku falls silent for a moment. "Wait, is that what you actually believed? All this time, Kachan? Just think about it. You've beaten me up since we were kids. You always ganged up on me with your friends. You've always belittled me in front of everyone at middle school, even the teachers. And we're not even counting what you told me at the beginning of the last year in middle school. If I really looked down on you, I wouldn't want anything to do with you anymore." Izuku clenches his fists and looks at Bakugo with a soft glare. "And yet, I'm still here. I noticed things all these years you couldn't because I had nothing at first. Sure, there were things I hated about you, but I could look past that and see how amazing you were. You got so much going for you that I didn't have. All Might was my hero, but you were the one actually in my life. Izuku charges up one for all and dashes at Bakugo, who crosses his arms to block the incoming attack. Izuku kicks Bakugo's arms, leaving a very red burnt mark on them. I thought you were incredible, Kachan. I wanted to see what you'd become. That's the reason I kept chasing after you. Itsuka suddenly realizes everything that's been going on between Izuku and Bakugo. While she didn't know the exact details, it was clear what was their relationship like. They had known each other for a long time, but Bakugo had always wanted to prove himself as the best, wanting to be unbeatable just like All Might. On the other hand, Izuku was a quirkless kid who also admired All Might and had always stuck with Bakugo no matter what happened. Bakugo must have taken Izuku's constant praises as sarcastic comments or false compliments, assuming that Izuku believed himself to be superior all this time. What Izuku really felt was genuine admiration for Bakugo, despite his poor treatment. Itsuka still felt angry at Bakugo, though. That was no excuse to treat Izuku like garbage. Bakugo reels back from Izuku's kick before looking at Izuku with an angry glare. You bastard. You passed me. Izuku and Bakugo charge at each other. Izuku's leg and Bakugo's hand collide, making them both stumble back for a moment. The two boys immediately charge at each other again, letting out primal roars of anger and frustration, now fully embracing all their pent-up emotions for one another. Itsuka had to take cover behind the wall instead of the window by this point. The strong gusts of wind sent by Izuku's attacks combined with Bakugo's explosions were destroying the fake city around them, cracking the windows and making some small buildings tremble. It was hard for her to believe how much the boys felt for each other. If they were letting out everything they thought about one another, then they must have had a lot of stuff suppressed. Izuku and Bakugo stumble back yet again. Izuku charges at Bakugo, now looking more fired up than before, which astonishes Itsuka. Is that all you've got? Bakugo charges at Izuku as well, with his teeth clenched. RRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRR block his leg, Izuku punches him in the face. But Bakugo looks at Izuku with pure, unmatched anger. I won't lose to you. Bakugo grabs Izuku by the shirt and kicks him in the stomach, flipping their positions. Once Izuku is below him, Bakugo uses his free hand to create one huge explosion in order to send them both crashing to the floor. When the dust settles, Itsuka sees the result of this fight. Both boys are beaten up, bruised and panting heavily, but Bakugo is pining Izuku to the floor with his leg and keeping his hand on Izuku's face. Bakugo clenches his teeth, panting and speaking in a shaky tone. That's it, we're done here. I won. You lost. How dare you lose? You have All Might's power, and even after using it, even after making it your own, you still somehow managed to lose to me. Then, the boys hear a voice behind them. Stop this right now, both of you. Bakugo lets go of Izuku and looks behind him. Bakugo almost gasps in surprise. All Might. Izuku coughs before sitting on the floor. When did you get here? All Might's voice is gentle and calming. I'm sorry, I should have noticed you weren't all right, young Bakugo. Bakugo looks away from All Might. It's too late. All Might, why did you pick Deku? All Might keeps walking towards his students with a serious yet soft expression. He was powerless, yet more heroic than anyone else. I knew you're strong, that much was obvious. You were someone who could already fight, so I decided that he should have a chance to stand in the ring. Bakugo's voice becomes shaky and wobbly. But now you know I'm weak. I wanted to be like you, which meant to be as strong as possible. But look what I did to you. Because I'm not good enough. All Might stops right beside Bakugo and embraces him in a warm, apologetic hug. This is not your fault, young Bakugo. I was always going to lose my power. You couldn't do anything to change that. You were strong, but I focused too much on your physical strength and overlooked what was important. This isn't your fault, none of it is. I apologize. Sometimes I forget that you're still children. Itsuka feels tears forming on her eyes. She never would have thought she'd feel sorry for Bakugo, yet here she was. The way Bakugo blamed himself for All Might's retirement, the way he had been keeping everything to himself, the way he wanted to stand out. Everything was too familiar to Itsuka. Even if Bakugo was a smug jerk most of the time, he was still a person like the rest of them. He had dreams, goals, ambitions, fears, insecurities and anxieties. Perhaps he hid them so well that everyone just assumed he had none. Itsuka lets out a small sigh and wipes the tears in her eyes. Bakugo lets go of All Might abruptly. All Might looks at him with a solemn expression. After being a hero for so many years you learn a few things. Striving to be the best like you, young Bakugo, and caring about people and rescuing those in need like you, young Midoriya. Both of those feelings are necessary in a hero, otherwise they'll never be able to truly represent justice. Perhaps that's why you admire his strength so much, young Midoriya. And I know that's why you've always feared his heart and spirit, young Bakugo. Now that you've laid your feelings on the table, maybe you can understand each other. Izuku and Bakugo give each other a side glance with doubtful eyes, and yet, there's a small hint of curiosity and a tiny spark of hope in them. Itsuka notices it too, and she smiles fondly. She might not be on the best terms with Bakugo, but she couldn't deny that his drive and need to be the best was unbeatable, and from all the time she had spent with Izuku she could tell that his heart always felt the need to save others. Their feelings are crude because they lack one another. All Might continues speaking. If you can do that, I have no doubt that you'll become the greatest heroes in no time, winning and saving people at the same time. A moment of silence passes. Bakugo looks down before sitting on the floor. Damn it, that's not what I wanted to hear. Deku, you had the greatest hero lay the groundwork for you. Don't you dare lose again. Izuku gives his friend a sad glance before replying in a more firm tone. I'll work harder, so that I can beat you. Bakugo sighs. All right, now talk. Who knows about you two? Itsuka feels a small twinge of fear at Bakugo's question. Should she come out and explain that she knows about One for All too? Itsuka takes a moment to think before deciding to stay hidden for now. If she came out at this instant, she'd probably be in trouble with All Might, as he'd probably think that she had bad intentions. Plus, it was Izuku's quirk now, and he was the one that told her about it. If anything, Izuku was the one who'd have the last say on whether or not letting All Might know that she knows about One for All. All Might answers calmly, Recovery Girl and Principal Nezu do. As far as students go, only you. Bakugo groans. And you don't want this to get out because that would be bad. Don't worry, your secret's safe with me. I won't tell anyone what's going on. Unlike Deku here, I can keep my mouth shut. This'll stay between us. Izuku sighs. Thanks, Kacchan. Izuku feels a pang of guilt on his chest for telling Itsuka about it. All Might smiles softly. I don't deserve this. I should be on my hands and knees begging you to keep this secret for me. Yet here you are being considerate. Thank you. Bakugo huffs. I'm not doing this for you. It'd just be a real pain if this got out and messed shit up. All Might sighs. Now that it's come to this, I can explain what's been happening between me and young Midoriya. It's only fair. And so, All Might told Bakugo the whole backstory about the great power known as One for All being passed down through generations in order to be used against great evil. About how he used this power to become the symbol of peace. About how he was gravely injured, which limited his strength. And finally, how he chose his successor. Itsuka had listened through it all as well, finding out about Izuku's encounter with the sludge villain, his one-year training with All Might before inheriting his quirk and some details she didn't know about. When All Might finishes his story, Bakugo sighs. If this got out people would be confused and start to wonder where the power is. You're a dumbass, Deku. What were you thinking when you first told me about it after the simulation training? Izuku sighs. All Might looks at Bakugo again. I've already said it, but I want to make it clear. It was my choice to use the last of my abilities. None of this is your fault. Bakugo simply looks down silently for a moment. This still doesn't change what I have to do. Things aren't gonna be the same, Deku. You've been watching me and everyone around you, absorbing what you learn to become stronger. Well, I can do the exact same thing and keep getting better myself. I'll go higher than even you, chosen one. Izuku looks down. Right. Bakugo scoffs. Izuku looks at Bakugo with a small smile. Then I guess I'll just have to be better than that. Bakugo raises an eyebrow. You what? Izuku puts up his fists. I'll have to go higher than you. Bakugo snarls. Damn it, nerd. I just said I was going to be the one that surpassed you. Izuku stares at Bakugo with a goofy smirk. I know. And now I'm saying that I'll go beyond that level. Bakugo growls. What? All Might and Itsuka chuckle. They both know that Izuku and Bakugo have now become proper rivals, in a way that they weren't before. Itsuka decides to go back to the dorms. She probably could have stayed and listened to their conversation some more, but it felt like there was nothing else to see here, since the fight ended with a positive outcome. Plus, she'd heard everything she needed to hear and she didn't want to be caught after curfew. Though, Itsuka knew that Monoma was going to pay for the absolutely disgusting low blow he had thrown at Bakugo. Going away so soon, Itsuka freezes when she hears an unknown male voice behind her. Before Itsuka can turn around, she feels a hand on her head. Gotcha. The floor below Itsuka breaks, and she sees and feels herself falling into an infinite void of nothingness. All Might and his students turn around to head to the dorms, but in that instant, an alarm sounds throughout the entire campus. Izuku looks around in a panic. What's going on? All Might's eyes open wide. That's the security systems. But that's impossible. A is impenetrable now. We got the best tech experts to work on our security systems and sensors, not to mention that we have the best technological resources in the country at our disposal. There should be no way an outsider could have broken in without getting detected. Bakugo looks around. TCH. Is the League of Losers behind this? All Might looks at his students briefly with a serious expression. Let's head back to the dorms. Quickly. From one day to the other, UA's reputation had suffered yet another grave blow. A student was missing, and it was none other than Class B's president, Itsuka Kendo. The press were already starting to gang up on UA, and the teachers were at a loss for words. The cameras and security bots had caught two students fighting, sure, but that was the last thing on anyone's minds at the moment, since there was no actual footage of an outsider breaking into UA anywhere. However, there was a slight exception. One camera had managed to get footage of three unknown individuals walking around campus. They were far from the camera and had their backs turned, which made it impossible to see who it was. This only added to the mystery of the case, since every other camera hadn't captured anything unusual on tape. It was as if these individuals had managed to bypass every security measure at UA except for this one. Were they careless at the last second? Or did they want to be seen on camera? Either way, UA was now being questioned by the public yet again. There were cracks on their perfection that were starting to show, and the public commented on it as soon as they picked up on them. What's worse is that it was yet another student that UA had failed to protect. And the students themselves. The joy Class B felt for getting their provisional hero licenses was cut short abruptly by the news. The dorms, which were once filled with laughter and cheer, now were filled with stress, anxiety and sadness. However, these were two students that had been handling the news worse than everyone else. Yui Kodai was never one to show much emotions, yet this was something she couldn't just process like everything else. After all, SHE was the one who pointed Itsuka towards Izuku and Bakugo. If she hadn't, perhaps Itsuka would still be with everyone. Yui had spent most of the morning locked in her room. She didn't come out except when she had to go to the bathroom, and the few students who saw her could definitely see that she was hurting, even though she still wore the same blank expression as ever. As the afternoon came, All Might, Endeavor, Aizawa and Vlad King came to the Class B dorms to talk to the students. Many told their teachers that Yui was the last person who spoke to Itsuka before she exited the dorms on her own. When the heroes spoke to Yui, she had been constantly blaming herself for Itsuka's disappearance. Yui told the heroes that Itsuka went after Izuku and Bakugo out of curiosity since they weren't in their dorms past curfew. As for the reactions to Izuku and Bakugo's fight, they had been a little toned down. Aizawa's first impulse was to expel Izuku and Bakugo at once with no takebacks, but All Might had convinced him otherwise. All Might told Aizawa that Izuku and Bakugo had fought because of his failure as a teacher in the first place, and that the news of their fight shouldn't reach the students or they'd be cast aside by their classmates. If word got out that Izuku and Bakugo had fought and Itsuka went missing as a result, everyone would blame them for her disappearance. In the end, Izuku and Bakugo received 1 day of house arrest for motives that were forbidden to talk about with their classmates. As for them, Izuku was the other person who couldn't handle the news well. Aizawa had given him and Bakugo the biggest sitting down of their entire lives, telling them that all they did was cause problems, chaos and disarray, and that Itsuka had most likely gone off on her own to make sure they were both okay. After Aizawa left the room, Izuku tried his hardest not to cry, but he couldn't help himself. Itsuka was gone, and it was all because of him. Bakugo looked beside him, and he saw Izuku starting to sob. "Why are you crying, nerd?" Izuku sniffles back some tears and speaks through a choked sob. I can't get off the feeling that this was my fault, Kachan. Itsuka is gone because of me." Bakugo scoffs. "That's another thing I hate about you, Deku. You're always taking things too personally because of your overthinking. You can't put the blame of this shit on your shoulders." Izuku tries to calm down. But Itsuka went off because... Bakugo interrupts Izuku and stares at him with an angry yet determined glare. "Because I wanted to fight you. If anyone's at fault for this, it's me. I promise she'll be back, nerd. The bastards who took orange hair will pay for this and more." Izuku takes a moment to collect himself before nodding. Yeah, all right. Izuku knows he shouldn't be doing this. It had been a few days since Itsuka had disappeared, and Izuku couldn't sleep well in that time. He had been thinking to himself, wondering what he could have done differently to avoid this situation, but no matter how much thought he put into it, the answer was always the same. There was nothing he could have done to prevent Itsuka's disappearance. His relationship with Bakugo had improved somewhat, and Bakugo had promised Izuku that they'd get Itsuka back no matter what. However, Izuku Midoriya had never been one to sit back and let time flow while someone was in danger. Izuku thought about the possible suspects who could have taken Itsuka away, and the answer was pretty obvious. Itsuka's old friends had managed to take her away. The problem with that theory is that it would be pretty difficult for that to be possible. Izuku knew what those girls were capable of, and yet none of their quirks would have been enough to sneak into UA completely undetected, much less with one person in their grasp. How on earth did they manage to bypass every security system at UA? There was no possible combination of their quirks that could have made this feat possible. The cameras were in good shape, and they had been fully operational all night, so there was no way the intruders managed to tamper with them. Nevertheless, Izuku's frustration and impatience got the better of him, and eventually pushed him over the edge. Izuku knew that he was doing something irrational, irresponsible, absurd and very dangerous, but he couldn't just sit back and abandon Itsuka. After spending his respective day off in house arrest, Izuku made up a story about his mom being sick and him being the only one who knew what medicine she needed, so he needed to get out of UA as soon as possible and take a day off. Some of the staff were skeptical about this, since a student had just disappeared and they didn't want another disappearance in their hands, but there wasn't much they could do to stop Izuku. After all, family did come first. Izuku was currently running through the alleyways of Musudafu in his hero outfit, searching for the specific alleyway in which he and Itsuka bumped into her old friends. Perhaps there would be clues to Itsuka's disappearance. It wasn't much, but it was all the leadway Izuku had to work with. Izuku finally arrives at the alley, and he begins to scan the place. The effects of their fight with Itsuka's old friends were still there. There were burnt marks on the floor and walls, some of the pavement was cracked and there were some dry blood stains on the floor. Izuku sighs, thinking back to the events that transpired in this place not too long ago. Itsuka had gone all out to protect him and herself, which was pretty exciting to watch at first, but now those memories just felt wrong. Itsuka had single-handedly managed to take down 2 skilled fighters in practically no time, and she probably would have taken the 3 of them out if Hikari stayed behind. This just worried Izuku even more and presented more difficulties on his theory of Itsuka's old friends coming to get her. Itsuka probably would have had some trouble dealing with more than one person, but she could sure put up a fight. The night she disappeared, everything was absolutely quiet except for Izuku's fight with Bakugo. If the girls took Itsuka, they must have either performed some silent takedown tactic to take care of her, or Izuku was missing something. How did Itsuka go down so easily without anyone even hearing her fight? Or perhaps there was no fight at all. Either way, Izuku had come here to see if there was some kind of sign of Itsuka's whereabouts in this place, and so far, all he got was even more worries. Izuku sighs before turning around, only to be met with the sight of 3 boys staring at him with malicious smiles. Izuku steps back on reflect. He had never seen any of these guys before, but their smiles and aura made it clear that they were not friendly. "Who are you?" One of the boys steps forward. The boy has short black hair, black eyes, and is dressed in a formal suit. The boy smiles maliciously. "Izuku Midoriya, you look shorter in real life than in TV." Izuku glares at the boys. They knew who he was and they were standing right in front of him at this specific alleyway right as he got the idea to search for Itsuka. It was too much of a coincidence. Izuku activates One for All preventively. "Who are you and what did you do with her?" Another boy steps forward. This boy has blue hair, blue eyes, and is dressed quite casually, but he looks more tired than his friends. Is this the boy, Satoshi? He doesn't look like much. His screams will be music to my ears. Izuku notices that this guy changed his tone drastically at that last bit. His voice was deeper and raspier. It was as if someone else had spoken after him. The boy dressed in a suit, whose name was appetently Satoshi, giggles. "It is, Kenshin. He might not look like much, but I know what he's capable of." Izuku's glare hardens. "Answer my question." The third boy steps forward. He is visibly shorter, he has green hair, green eyes, and his outfit was very flashy. The boy was dressed in very bright colors, almost like a clown or prankster. The boy smiles maliciously. "So this is really him. Great, let's hurry up with this, then." Izuku adopts a fighting stance while glaring at his soon-to-be opponents. "I am the hero Deku. I will not rest until Itsuka Kendo is safe, you hear me?" "Where is she?" The 3 boys giggle. Satoshi snaps his fingers. "Get him, boys." In response, the short boy's eyes glow purple for an instant while the blue-haired boy starts to groan painfully. Izuku wastes no time before dashing at his opponents. "I know this is risky, but I don't know how their quirks work. Gotta take them down fast." But then, the unexpected happens. Izuku slips on a puddle on the floor and falls face first to the hard concrete below him. Izuku groans. "What the? How did this happen? I swear that wasn't there a second ago. Or did I not see it?" Izuku notices that the blue-haired boy starts to change. He becomes slightly taller, his eyes turn red, his hair grows while turning red, and a red lightning engulfs his body. Izuku gets up and dashes at the trio again. Crap, how does his quirk work? But before Izuku can get far, a bird drops some poop onto his face. Izuku staggers backwards, grossed out but also surprised at the absurdity of the situation. What the heck? How did that happen? Izuku wipes the remains of feces off his face only to be met with the sight of the now red-haired boy right in front of him. "Let's see how powerful you really are." The boy punches Izuku in the stomach, and Izuku is sent crashing against the wall. Izuku audibly grunts. That was even stronger than me." And his voice, it's completely different. Izuku gets up and dashes at the red-haired boy once again, but before he can reach him, a tree leaf which was floating in the wind gets stuck to his eye. Izuku staggers back again. Damn it. No, this isn't happening on coincidence. This has to be one of their quirks. Who's doing it and how does it work? Before Izuku can react, the red-haired boy grabs him by the arm and throws him to the wall. "You're a weakling." Izuku grunts again. He's fast too." Izuku gets up again and sees the red-headed boy approaching. Izuku takes a deep breath before charging up one for all in his right arm. I'm gonna destroy you. The boy charges at Izuku with a noticeable thirst for blood. Washington. Once the boy is close enough, Izuku uppercuts him, sending him staggering back. Smaash. The boy is sent crashing to the wall behind him, giving Izuku some time to catch his breath. Izuku looks around to see where the other two are. He sees the green-haired guy standing in the same position he was at the beginning, but the guy in the suit was nowhere to be seen. Before Izuku can react, the black-haired guy appears behind him and places his hand on Izuku's head. Gotcha. Checkmate. The floor below Izuku breaks, and he sees and feels himself falling into an infinite void of nothingness. Izuku wakes up in a dark room, which is dimly lit. He looks to his surroundings, but doesn't see anything. It's almost as if he was in some sort of gray cube. And then, his eyes fix on her. It was Itsuka. She was laying down on the floor, and she appeared to be unconscious. Izuku wasted no time before rushing to her side. When Izuku reaches her, he tries desperately to wake her up. Itsuka, it's me, are you okay? Then, Itsuka coughs a bit before opening her eyes weakly. Izuku, is that you? Izuku couldn't believe it. He had found Itsuka, and she was safe. Izuku hugged Itsuka as tight as he could. Itsuka, oh God, we were all so worried. I was so worried. Itsuka coughs before letting go of Izuku. Thanks, Izuku. But, what happened? Where are we? Izuku looks to his surroundings again. I don't know, Itsuka. Poor things, you must feel so unpleased. Izuku shivers at the sound of a male voice echoing through the room. Izuku helps Itsuka get up and holds her close while snarling at the room. Where are you? Show yourself, coward. The room lights up, and a figure appears in front of Izuku and Itsuka. It's the black-haired guy in the suit, Satoshi, who smiles mockingly at the pair. Wakey, Izuku. Izuku glares at Satoshi while holding Itsuka close. Who are you? What the hell do you want? What's your deal with Itsuka? How did you break into UA without getting detected? Satoshi giggles. Calm down, hero. I know you have lots of questions and they'll be answered eventually, but for now all you need to know is that you're trapped here with no way out. Izuku and Itsuka raise an eyebrow. Izuku talks in an untrusting tone. All right, what are you playing at? Satoshi chuckles. Me, nothing. If anyone's gonna do some playing it's you, Izuku Midoriya. You'll have to beat me if you wanna get out with your precious Itsuka Kendo. Izuku glares at the boy. So what's stopping me and Itsuka from beating you up at this very instant? Satoshi claps his hands. Do it if you want. You'd only be wasting precious time and energy which you'll need for what lies ahead of you. Itsuka rushes over to the boy and tries to punch him, but her hand goes through him. Damn it, what did you do? Satoshi shrugs. What, do you think I'll spoil the surprise so soon? Nah. Izuku sighs. Fine. We'll beat your little game if it means we'll get out of here. Satoshi smirks. Oh, but that's the beauty of this, Izuku Midoriya. If you want to beat me. The room darkens completely for a moment. You'll have to beat yourself first. The lights of the room come back, and a door appears on a wall. Izuku and Itsuka look at each other briefly before going through the door, unsure of what to expect but willing to get out of there. The next room is also dark. But what intrigues the duo is that the room is noticeably larger than the last one. Satoshi's voice echoes through the room. You are a very interesting person, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku clenches his teeth as he walks through the room with Itsuka following closely. Thanks, I guess. Why is that so? Such a strong body and mind, yet. You seem to overthink and worry about stuff you don't need to worry about. Izuku swallows some spit. It's almost as if this guy knew about his habit to overthink. There was no way he could know about it, though. Well, I guess that's just how I am. Say, you're quite fond of spiders, aren't you? Izuku gulps. He has been afraid of spiders ever since he was a little kid because a spider had bitten him while he was eating lunch at school, causing him a great amount of pain that lasted for days. Perhaps this is a great way to present the challenges you'll face. Oh, And by the way, don't play dumb with me. We both know what you can do. So go ahead and break your body if that's all you're good at. As soon as those words left Satoshi's lips, a huge number of spiders swarmed into the room. Izuku and Itsuka felt goosebumps on their skin. The spiders were noticeably big, and there were so many of them it was impossible to see a spot on the floor that wasn't being covered up by the spiders. The arachnids were quick to swarm the pair, and Izuku cried out when the creatures crawled up his legs. The spiders began to attack them both, biting into their skin. Izuku felt an awful pit on his stomach. No, this is too much. Izuku looked to the side and saw Itsuka being ganged up on by the spiders, who were now covering her up completely. Izuku dashed over to her side, trying to get his mind off the feeling of the spiders on his body. Itsuka. Itsuka tried to swat the spiders away, but it was no use. For every spider she swatted away, 6 more crawled up her body. Izuku, we have to get out of here. Izuku looked to the side and saw another door. Izuku quickly held Itsuka's hand and dashed towards it. However, it seemed that the room was getting bigger and the spiders were multiplying as Izuku took more steps. By now, Izuku's feet were stuck to the spot, as the spiders completely swarmed him. No, Itsuka. Izuku looked back to her, and he saw that Itsuka had fallen to the floor. The spiders were quick to swarm over her body and cover her completely. Izuku swallowed, before charging up the power of One for All in his entire body. Oklahoma. SMAAASH. Izuku spun in place with his fist extended, as he saw All Might do many times before. Izuku created a gust of wind so strong it turned into a small tornado which made every spider in the room float away from them for a moment. Izuku grunts in pain before looking at his now injured left arm. Damn it, I didn't mean to use that much force. Izuku shook off the thought before going over to Itsuka's side and helping her get up. Itsuka, we gotta go. Itsuka nodded before the pair made one last sprint towards the door. Izuku closed the door behind him once they were both on the other side. Izuku lets out a sigh of relief. Phew, we made it. Are you okay, Itsu? Izuku was cut short when he took a look at Itsuka. For some reason her face seemed blurry. It was as if he was staring at her through some kind of stained glass. Itsuka tilted her head to the side. I think I'm fine, Izuku. But, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Izuku takes a moment before shaking his head to snap out of his trance. Ah, I'm fine, but, your face, Itsuka. Itsuka touches her own face in concern. What's wrong with it? I can't see it very well. What do you mean? I'm right here. It's hard to explain, Itsuka. Itsuka sighs. You know what? Let's just get out of here first and then we'll worry about my face. I have a feeling we haven't faced the worst yet. Izuku nods. You're right, but, I wonder how this guy's quirk works. Maybe he's working with someone else to create all of this. Those spiders looked very real, and the room felt surreal. Do you think he can create hallucinations based on our fears? If not, then maybe he's working with someone who can manifest thoughts. Itsuka shrugs. Satoshi's voice echoes through the room again. Ah, you made it. How? Curious. Izuku holds Itsuka's hand. Your name was Satoshi, wasn't it? Who are you and what are you gaining from this? Satoshi giggles. Oh, I might come off as someone very eccentric, but I'm really a very simple person who thinks about stuff that no one else cares about. Izuku raises an eyebrow. Explain yourself. You see, have you ever wondered what's the purpose of everything? What our mission is as a species? What we humans came to the world for? Izuku looks slightly surprised at the sudden thought-provoking subject. Satoshi sighs. Yeah, I know you haven't. No one I've ever met has, and it's a bit absurd. Either way, there's no clear answer to that. We won't ever know why we're alive or what our place in the universe is. Izuku gives Itsuka's hand a gentle squeeze before replying to Satoshi. That doesn't answer my question. What are you even gaining from torturing me and Itsuka? Satoshi grunts. Of course you're not listening. No one ever listens. Izuku looks at his surroundings with a small glare. I am listening to you, Satoshi. I just don't know why you're giving much thought to an impossible question. Satoshi chuckles. At least I have your attention. I'm glad. Anyways, even if you don't believe me, that question made me go down the path I walked today. Izuku raises an eyebrow again. How did that happen? You see, since we don't have a clue to what our true purpose is as a species, we also don't really understand the political frameworks that really govern the world. That's why none of that should exist from my point of view. No heroes, villains, political parties, none of that noise matters. Do you honestly believe that we came to this world just to fight on stupid ideals like heroes and villains? No, we don't know anything about anything. We don't know what happens after death. We don't know when this small rock floating in space we call Earth will cease to exist. We don't know what our place in the universe is. If we suddenly were to disappear, no one would care. No one really cares about our small lives in the great scope of the universe. Nothing matters. Nothing makes sense. Izuku feels an uneasy feeling creep onto his back at Satoshi's words. Izuku takes a breath before replying. You're wrong, Satoshi. Satoshi falls silent for a moment. Pardon, I said you're wrong, Satoshi. Satoshi grunts. Mind elaborating? Izuku looks at the empty room with a determined stare. You said no one cares about our lives. You're wrong. We care. Sure. We don't know what'll happen once we die. But isn't that just a motive to enjoy our lives to the fullest in the time we have? Satoshi chuckles. You're right on that, which finally brings me to the point of this conversation. If our great purpose in this obscure universe is to enjoy our lives, then I'll do whatever the hell I want with no consequences. Izuku lets out a small gasp at Satoshi's words. What do you mean? I had a big brother. But he hated me because our mother loved me more than him. His hatred for me grew as time passed, and it evolved into physical attacks. I still remember all the times I cried and begged him to stop, but he didn't stop until I was on the floor, bloodied and barely conscious. I couldn't take it anymore, so I grabbed a knife and plunged it into his throat while he slept. That felt so good. Izuku shivers. You're crazy. I left my house after that and became a murderer. I felt so good when I was killing. It's as if I had taken all the anger and hatred of the world when I left home. I started to ask myself the same questions I asked you and came to the same conclusion as you, Midoriya. If we're the only ones who care about our pitiful lives on this small space rock, then why the hell should I waste time caring about others? I'll spend my life doing whatever I like. Izuku clenches his teeth. You monster. Heroes were created to keep people safe from psychopaths like you. Am I really the monster? Or am I the only one who sees the big picture? Izuku growls. Why are you doing this? Why not use your life to spread positivity instead? Satoshi laughs. Positivity? That's not what I want, Midoriya. All the power I've gained has been through fear and intimidation. The only times I'm not feeling empty is when I'm killing. Izuku's glare hardens. Is that why you took Itsuka? Just so you'd have someone to hurt? Oh, not at all. You see, I'm the leader of a street gang and we're not playing around. We'll grow strong to harvest chaos and disarray to our heart's content, but in order to do that, we have to make the group bigger. I have some acquaintances that were willing to help us out just as long as we brought that girl over to them. Izuku's mind starts to think. Is he talking about Itsuka's old friends? Did they join forces with Satoshi and his gang to get Itsuka back? Satoshi giggles. It was quite easy to sneak into UA, actually. When you have a valuable person in your group, things get easier. Izuku takes a mental note. So he's referring to a person in his gang whose quirk made Itsuka's kidnapping possible. Better find out who it is. Oh, believe me, I am enjoying this conversation, but we're still not through with the challenge ahead of you, Izuku. Izuku looks at the empty room again while holding Itsuka's hand. Bring it. Let's see. Ever since you got that quirk of yours, you've always kept a small fear hidden inside your brain, Izuku. Then it hits Izuku. Satoshi knew about One for All, and if that's the case, then now everything made sense. None of this was real. Izuku and Itsuka are trapped in their own heads, and Satoshi was playing with their fears. Satoshi laughs. That's it. Every time you activate your quirk you feel a small pang of fear hit your soul, Itsuka. You fear the pain and agony that come when you punch something at full power. You fear losing your limbs. Perhaps you fear having your bones broken, or better yet, smashed and shattered. I can work with this. Suddenly, Izuku and Itsuka feel a sharp pain in their limbs, and they fall on the floor. Izuku and Itsuka scream, feeling as if their fingers were turned into ice and then broken with a hammer. Izuku feels as if his legs were being slowly ripped off from his body while Itsuka feels as if her hands were being ran over by a car. Satoshi's laughter is the last thing on Izuku's mind. Izuku looks at Itsuka with a pained expression. Itsuka, hold on. Itsuka lifts her head to look at Izuku while crying out in pain. Izuku. Izuku cries out in pain as he tries to stand up, but he smiles through the pain. I'm not finished. I won't let you win, Satoshi. Satoshi's laughter ceases. Izuku stands up despite the pain on his limbs. You are a sick bastard. I won't rest until you're behind bars. Do you hear me? Izuku now fully stands up, ignoring the pain. In that instant, the room lights up and the pain disappears. Izuku lets out a shaky breath before going over to check on Itsuka. Itsuka, are you okay? Itsuka grunts on the floor. Yeah, I am. Izuku helps Itsuka get up, but when he does, his eyes go wide. Itsuka. What is it? Izuku blinks to see if this is another hallucination. Now Itsuka's entire head is blurry. Your head. Are you okay? Yeah, I am. Why? Izuku feels like something terrible is about to happen. And never mind. Let's just move on. The couple step into the next room, which is also empty and silent. Satoshi's voice echoes through the room. Ah, silence. The only other thing I love more than screams. Izuku growls. You'll pay for everything, Satoshi. Satoshi sighs. I must admit, I am a bit disappointed, Izuku. I was hoping you'd give up halfway, but you're like a very persistent worm. Perhaps I need to go deeper into your head if I really want to break you. Izuku doesn't even flinch. Do your worst. After I beat your stupid game you won't be laughing. Show yourself and stop hiding like a coward. Satoshi giggles. Let's see. Then, a figure appears in front of Izuku. It was All Might. Satoshi chuckles. Look at him. So still, so imponent, so smiling. It's a shame you disappointed him, just like you always disappoint your teachers. Izuku speaks through clenched teeth. I'm not listening to you, Satoshi. Satoshi laughs. Right, because you never listen at all. You didn't listen to your friends when they told you to not go save Bakugo from the League of Villains. You didn't listen when Aizawa told you and your classmates to stay inside the dorms after curfew. You didn't listen to Itsuka when she told you to not injure yourself anymore at the sports festival. You didn't listen when your teachers told you to stay at UA instead of going off to save Itsuka on your own. All of this is on you. Izuku grits his teeth. Shut up. Then, the room darkens and Izuku hears many voices around him. He hears Aizawa's voice, telling him that he could never be a hero with his self-destructive quirk and reckless attitude. He hears All Might's voice, reminding him of the time when All Might told him that the quirkless couldn't be heroes. He hears Bakugo's voice, reminding him of the first day of middle school when he told Izuku to kill himself. He hears his mother's voice, reminding him that not even she believed that he could become a hero without a quirk. Izuku felt lost in the darkness, as if every ray of hope and light was being extinguished from his soul. It was a sinking feeling, as if all light would fade and he'd die alone in the dark with no one to hear him. But then, Izuku remembered that he wasn't the same as before. He had come a long way since middle school, and it was thanks to the people he had met that he was able to get where he was in the first place. Even though Aizawa was sometimes rough as a teacher, Izuku remembered that he had given his all to defend him, Tsuyu and Mineta at the USJ incident. He had his head smashed to the floor by the Nomu, but he had secured the safety of his students. Izuku was glad to have Aizawa as a teacher. Perhaps it was a tough love situation. Even though All Might didn't quite believe in him at first, Izuku had managed to surprise him and even himself at the sludge villain incident. After that, All Might had repeatedly assured Izuku that he couldn't have chosen a better successor. Izuku felt blessed to have the greatest hero of all time as his mentor, and even if he sometimes didn't listen, All Might had never expressed disappointment in him. Izuku's relationship with Bakugo had been rough for the longest time, but his fight with him some days ago was useful to let each other know how they felt. Plus, Izuku remembered that Bakugo wasn't always a mean, arrogant jerk. The way he blamed himself for All Might's retirement was one that pained Izuku, and the way he looked at him in the eye while promising to catch whoever took Itsuka away assured Izuku that things would only improve from this point. His mother hadn't told him what he wanted to hear in that moment, but that didn't matter anymore. His hero outfit was proof of that. Ever since Izuku managed to get into UA, his mother was nothing but supportive, and even if she had put up some resistance and skepticism to him moving to UA, Izuku knew that it was because she loved him and cared for him unconditionally. He couldn't have asked for a better mother if he even wanted to. And last but not least, Izuku's mind drifted to the sports festival, to the moment he met Itsuka. God, he felt like meeting her was a miracle. He had trusted her with the secret of One for All and she wasn't bothered at all. She was happy to teach him martial arts to improve with his quirk. Not to mention how she always stuck around him despite his many flaws. Izuku remembered what Itsuka told him at the sports festival. Well, if it helps, you have at least one person who believes in you now. Just take it easy, okay? I'm here now. Maybe check with your pal Itsuka first before going all Rambo on him. Izuku felt happy at the memories of Itsuka. He had never met anyone who made him feel as safe as she did. It was like he could just be himself around her. No putting up strong fronts, no nervous need to keep secrets, no urgent need to meet expectations. Izuku might have gone off on his own to save Itsuka by himself, but he didn't regret it. Itsuka was someone worth fighting for. It took a moment for Izuku to realize he had been walking this entire time. He was already at the end of the room and he hadn't even realized it. There was also something strange about that experience. Even though he was completely engulfed in darkness, Izuku felt like there were more people watching him. Their presence felt different to Satoshi, though. It felt calming. Izuku lets out a small sigh before stepping into the next room. Upon entering the next room, Izuku sees that Satoshi is standing in front of him with a small glare. Izuku tries to grab Itsuka's hand again, but he turns around and realizes that she's nowhere to be found, as if she had never even been there in the first place. He also realizes that the door to the previous room has disappeared. Izuku looks at Satoshi with a glare. Where is she? Satoshi groans. Could you please explain? How the actual beep you still stand? This is becoming annoying. You should just give up and stay down, but somehow you keep getting up. Izuku steps forward. I guess I'm just that stubborn. Satoshi grins. If I really wanna get to you, then I will have to invade that tiny bastard brain of yours from the front lobe. Izuku's glare hardens. I won't give up. The room goes dark again, and when the lights come back on again, Satoshi's figure is replaced by a memory of Bakugo being taken by the League of Villains at the forest training camp. Satoshi speaks in a low, threatening tone. You can't save anyone. Izuku steps back from shock, and when he tries to avert his gaze, he sees the memory of him being completely powerless against Muscular. If it wasn't for that kid helping you, you'd be dead. Izuku sprints past the projections of his failures, but before he can reach the exit, a memory of himself being defeated by Bakugo from their recent fight appears. Too weak to live up to his standards. Izuku falls to his knees and starts to hyperventilate. Satoshi really knew where to strike, what buttons to press and how much. Having Izuku's failures thrown to his face was something no one had done to him, and it was being quite effective. Izuku looks down in a panicked state. He didn't want to admit defeat, but this was too much to bear. There was a tiny spot of doubt in Izuku's soul that always refused to go away. He doubted his capability to become All Might's successor. He doubted himself when he made reckless decisions. He doubted his capabilities to become a hero. This was it. Who'd be dumb enough to put their trust on him? No one. But Izuku thinks about Itsuka again. His mind drifts back to the night he had told Itsuka about One for All. Her words. We all make mistakes sometimes, but that's just how life goes. We have our high moments and low moments, but none define who we are. We are just humans, after all. I've said it before and I'll keep saying it until you get it once and for all. You're not alone. I'm here for you. Thanks for trusting me with this. I won't tell anyone. Itsuka was a pillar of support for him. Itsuka trusted him. Itsuka was the only one who had promised to be there for him when he needed it. Izuku still wasn't sure if he was good enough. He still didn't know if he'd be good enough to follow in All Might's footsteps. He didn't know if he could become the next symbol of peace. But right now, that didn't matter. Itsuka was in trouble, and by God, he'd try his damn hardest to save her. Izuku exhales deeply before dashing to the door, leaving the projections of his failures behind. Izuku closes the door behind him and finds himself on a cliff overlooking a dark and empty void. Satoshi is directly in front of him, facing away from Izuku with his arms crossed. Izuku growls mentally. The way Satoshi was standing in that mocking yet ominous pose, dressed in that suit and having that threatening aura around him. It reminded Izuku of another undesirable individual. Nevertheless, All for One wasn't here. Izuku glares at Satoshi with no empathy left in him. Where is she? Satoshi laughs. Izuku clenches his teeth. Where is she? Satoshi laughs even harder. Izuku loses his patience. Where is she? Satoshi's laughter evolves into a maniacal laughter. Izuku glares at Satoshi with hateful eyes. Where is she? Satoshi looks at Izuku with a maddened grin. She's with us. You have no idea how stupid you've been all this time for thinking she was with you. Now she is ours. She is with us in the real world and there's absolutely nothing you can do. Izuku feels his frustration, exasperation and worry for Itsuka accumulate. Take me back to the real world. Satoshi giggles. You still haven't bested me yet, Izuku. You still haven't bested yourself. Izuku growls. You think I care about your dumb games? Take me back. Satoshi laughs and starts to grow in size until he covers the void in front of the cliff. You're a long way from home, little Izuku. Your bravery has been great so far, but we both know the ending. Izuku stands on the edge of the cliff, looking at Satoshi with the angriest expression he had ever mustered. You think you scare me? I've fought against worse than you. Satoshi's face and body changes, and transforms into Aizawa. Satoshi towers over Izuku, speaking using Aizawa's voice. What if you're wrong about everything you think about yourself, huh? What if you become useless at some point? Although surprised, Izuku retaliates. I am not listening to you, Satoshi. Mr. Aizawa might have not believed in me at first, but I know he's seen me grow. I won't let him down. Satoshi transforms into Bakugo. And yet, you always seem to let someone down. How dare you lose against me, huh? Izuku growls. You're not him. Plus, I promised Kachan that I'd get stronger to beat him. I'm getting better and I don't plan on ever stopping. Satoshi transforms into All Might. That's your problem, young Midoriya. You never stop, not even when I tell you to. You always find some way to disappoint me. Izuku shouts. All Might would never say that. I swear I'll be worthy of being his student. Satoshi transforms into Uraraka. If that's the case then you're millions of miles away from it. You couldn't even be on time to save me. Izuku chokes on a sob of frustration. You're not her. I know I was too slow to save her, but... Satoshi transforms into Todoroki. You couldn't save her, Midoriya. How could you even hope to compete against someone like me when you failed to save Uraraka from being hurt and Bakugo from being kidnapped? I would have secured everyone's safety in no time. Izuku sniffs back tears of anger and exasperation. Satoshi transforms into Endeavor. Hoping to be something you just can't is just pointless, kid. It's cruel, not even I could surpass All Might. What makes you think that some useless nobody like you could step up to his level? Or mine, even. Izuku looks down. You're not him. Satoshi transforms into Shigaraki. You almost got killed by me at the mall. If that girl hadn't come, you'd be nothing but ashes by now. Not to mention that so-called hero school of yours is only making you soft while I grow stronger. While your focus has been on useless duties like choosing hero names and cleaning bathrooms, the League of Villains is gaining power. Soon, the complete destruction of hero society will come and you'll be forced to watch from the sidelines as everything you love turns into ashes. Izuku starts to tremble. That's not. Satoshi transforms into the hero killer Stain. I should have killed you when I had the chance. The vulnerable state hero society is in right now is the perfect opportunity for the League of Villains to expose how fragile their sense of justice is, and the worst part is that you're too weak and pathetic to stop them from doing it. Izuku's expression falls. Satoshi transforms into muscular. You got some pretty good raw power, kid. And yet, you're too stupid and weak to use it. If it wasn't for that kiddo saving you, I would have killed you. Izuku loses his fighting stance. No, Kota is. Satoshi transforms into All for One. You never stood a chance to begin with. Not you or anyone in that glorified hero school. Your resistance is pointless. I've already won. You're too weak and helpless to save that girl you were searching for. All Might's attempts to stop me have failed, just as your attempts to save that girl have failed too. Is there anything more painful than watching that tiny spark of hope in your soul be crushed and shattered before your very eyes? You cannot ever hope to beat me, Izuku Midoriya. Izuku tears up. Satoshi transforms into Itsuka. You've lost me, Izuku. Even if you do rescue me, you'll just disappoint me like you'll disappoint everyone else. Izuku kneels down and chokes on a muffled sob. Izuku suddenly finds himself at the edge of the cliff, overlooking the endless darkness of the void below him. Many eyes appear on the sky, all staring at him. A maniacal laughter can be heard in the distance. Satoshi speaks using Itsuka's voice again. Go on, do it. Jump just like Bakugo told you back in middle school. You tried and yet you've lost me and yourself. You can't save anyone. You can't do anything, so don't even try it, Izuku. There's nothing left for you either way. Give up and accept reality. Izuku looks at the void in front of him for some moments. The void is dark, empty and seemingly infinite. And yet, its call is enticing. Like giving up would be a release. Izuku lifts his left leg. Before stepping back from the edge of the cliff, Satoshi morphs back to his original form, towering over Izuku and grinning from ear to ear maliciously. Can't you see, Izuku? You're lost and alone, you have nowhere to go, no one to turn to, and Itsuka is lost. Why do you still fight? Izuku takes a moment to think about that question. Izuku looks up at Satoshi with an absolutely enraged expression. Because I love her. Satoshi's grin turns into a surprised expression. Izuku activates One for All and jumps towards the giant Satoshi. Detroit. SMAAAAAAASH. Izuku punches Satoshi in the face, and the entire cliff goes dark. After some moments, Satoshi appears on the ground before Izuku, looking beaten up and tired. Izuku glares at his fallen opponent. Satoshi coughs before smiling at Izuku. You know, I loved stories too, romance stories, to be exact. Love is a strange thing. It can make you stronger or weaker. It can be your greatest strength or your biggest weakness. Your source of power or your downfall. Izuku scoffs. I don't care. Satoshi coughs again before looking at Izuku with a small smile. Oh, don't you want to hear more of me and my stories? Don't you wanna save me, like only you do? Don't you wanna see the light inside me like you desperately want to in everyone? Aren't you gonna foolishly try to save me from myself, as you always want to do with everyone? Izuku's glare hardens. Take me back now. Satoshi giggles softly. Calm down, Izuku. This time we spent together was fun, wasn't it? Izuku huffs. Never call me that again. I'm the hero in training. Deku, to you. Satoshi chuckles. Alright, you beat me, so I have to keep my part of the deal. Just don't regret it. The cliff starts to go dark until everything fades away. Izuku opens his eyes and finds himself in some sort of disheveled hospital bed. The room he finds himself in is quite messy, dirty and poorly lit. It looked like some sort of abandoned surgery room. Izuku looks to the side and sees Satoshi clutching his head in pain while walking to the door. Instantly, Izuku's tiredness disappears. Hey, come back here. Satoshi turns around the corner. Izuku gets up and sprints after the boy, not caring about the numbness he feels in his entire body. Izuku follows Satoshi to another room. And Izuku freezes at the sight. In the room, Izuku sees Itsuka's old friends sitting on different parts of the room with solemn expressions. They were all there: Haruka, Hikari, Misa, and a girl he assumed was Hinoka. However, what made Izuku freeze was the person standing in the center of the room. It was Itsuka. Her pupils were green and her lips were tugged into a smile, yet it was the fakest, emptiest and most lifeless smile Izuku had ever seen. Itsuka waves at Izuku. Wakey wakey, Izuku. Satoshi grins tiredly while wrapping his arms around Itsuka from behind her. See, she's here. Congrats, champ, you found her at last. Izuku drops to his knees. Satoshi's grin widens. She is ours and ours only. And this is all your fault. Izuku lets out a blood-curdling scream. Itsuka opened her eyes. She looked around to see where she was, and found herself in some sort of abandoned surgery room. Itsuka tried to remember what had happened, but not much came to her mind. She remembered going off on her own to see what Izuku and Bakugo were up to after curfew. She had seen them battle. All Might had showed up. She had heard a male voice behind her, felt a hand on her head, and then nothing. Itsuka got up from the bed she was laying on. She felt like she had slept for a long time, and it certainly seemed to be that way. Itsuka looked outside a nearby window and saw that she wasn't very far away from UA. Plus, it was daytime already. Had she slept through the entire night in this place? Itsuka shook her head before deciding to explore the place she found herself in. As Itsuka wandered through the empty halls of the building she was in, she concluded that this must have been a hospital of some sort before being abandoned. Then, Itsuka heard voices coming from a nearby room. Itsuka approached the room and hid behind the corner of the door. She instantly recognized the voices of her 4 former friends talking to each other. Were they the ones who had taken her here? Hinoka sighs, unaware of Itsuka listening to their conversation. Look, girls, I swear I'm just trying to keep us safe. Haruka scoffs. Yeah, right, this place is smelly, dark and dirty. Misa nods. Not to mention that it's not a good place to train. Hikari sighs. Yeah, and I don't like working with Satoshi either. I don't think any of us do. Hinoka sighs again. I know. Just bear with me for now. This place is just a hiding spot for the moment. No one would try to search for us or Itsuka here. As for Satoshi and his gang, well, whether we like it or not, he was our best shot at getting Itsuka back. Hikari pouts. How do you know that, Hinoka? We've always fended for ourselves. I'm sure we could have snuck into UA without getting caught. Why didn't you give us a chance? Hinoka looks down. Because I don't want to risk any of you getting arrested. Plus, UA has doubled down on their security systems ever since the USJ incident, and it's been worse ever since All Might's fight with that villain in Camino, since the students now live in UA because of it. There's no way any of us could have entered without getting detected. Luckily, Satoshi had the resources to do so. Misa looks at Hinoka with skepticism. Is that so, Hinoka? I have utmost confidence in my quirk and stealth abilities. I am more than capable of sneaking into any place I want. Hinoka rolls her eyes. I know you're capable, Misa. But I wasn't risking you getting arrested. Plus, Satoshi's gang had the appropriate resources to sneak into UA without causing an uproar. Haruka scoffs. What's so special about those assholes anyway? What do they have that we don't, Hinoka? Hinoka rubs her forehead. Satoshi's gang might be small, but their quirks are formidable and useful. The only reason they remain as a small gang and not a big criminal organization is because of Satoshi's murderous tendencies. His lackeys only stick with him out of fear. Hikari looks at Hinoka with concern. But that's just another reason for us to be wary of them, right? We can't trust them, not with him in charge. Hinoka looks at Hikari with a sad expression. I don't like working with them either, but they were the only ones capable of getting Itsuka. Haruka growls. Out with it, Hinoka. What makes those bastards so special? Hinoka sighs in resignation. Well, their names are Satoshi, Kenshin, Kuki and Saisuke. Satoshi's quirk is a bit similar to mine. Everyone fears him because of it. Misa looks at Hinoka with worry. Is his quirk really that terrible, Hinoka? Hinoka nods. His quirk is called Delirium, and it gives him abilities similar to mine. He and I are both capable of moving stuff with our minds and using psychic force to defend ourselves in battle, but Satoshi's quirk is significantly stronger on its psychological effects against one individual. If he manages to touch someone, he can mess with their minds in a way that no one else can. He'll trap his opponents inside their own heads, playing with their fears and insecurities for as long as he wants. It'd take a will of titanium to break free of his grasp. The girls feel a cold shiver run down their spine. Hikari speaks. But, you're more powerful, right, Hinoka? Hinoka looks away. Well, my quirk is more suited for combat and on a wider range, but his quirk is unbeatable against one individual. I can still control someone fully, but my grasp on people's minds is nowhere near as strong as Satoshi's quirk. Misa lets out a sigh. Did he use his quirk on Itsuka? Hinoka looks at Misa with concern. It was probably the only way to take her without getting noticed. I just hope he didn't go overboard. Itsuka takes a moment to process everything she just heard. Her friends had stooped low before, sure, but she never would have expected them to work with criminals like that guy. Although, that would explain why she couldn't remember much. Perhaps that Satoshi guy had managed to sneak up on her while she was distracted during All Might's conversation with Izuku and Bakugo. Haruka grunts. Hinoka, that guy sounds like a complete garbage excuse of a human being. We didn't need to work with him. Hinoka glares at Haruka softly. We still needed his gang, though. They've got one individual who is very important. Hikari rolls her eyes. Come on, Hinoka, who could possibly be so important? Hinoka looks down. Saisuke. His quirk is called Binary, and it gives him total control over all devices he desires. He can turn UA into his playing field with his quirk if he wanted to. Sensors, cameras, motion detectors, robots. Anything he can connect to will turn into his toy if he wants. The three girls look at Hinoka with surprised expressions. Haruka speaks. That quirk sounds like complete bullshit. Hinoka smiles softly. Don't worry, though, Saisuke can use his quirk connecting to the devices via internet access. The way he keeps his quirk working is through a helmet. If he loses that helmet, he'll be as good as useless. Plus, the guy only hangs out in the basement of this hospital. He's not fit for battle. If anything, he's a couch potato. Itsuka thinks back to UA's security measures. Most of the stuff UA relied on was electronic. If this Saisuke guy managed to sneak into UA, he'd be unstoppable. Although, she was already there, so it seems like he had bypassed every single security measure successfully. Better remember that guy just in case. Thought Itsuka before listening to the conversation again. Hikari sighs. I see. And what about the others? Hinoka looks up in thought. Well, Kuki's quirk is called Misery, and it makes him able to bring bad luck to a single individual for a couple of hours. Hikari smiles. Oh, I bet that's a fun quirk to use. Hinoka chuckles softly. Yeah, the guy dresses as a prankster most of the times, so I bet he has quite a lot of fun with his quirk. Misa smiles. I'd say so. And what about Kenshin? Hinoka puts her finger to her own chin in thought. Kenshin. His quirk is called Duality, and it gives him the ability to transform into a red-headed monster with an insatiable thirst for blood and violence. Hikari's eyes open wide. Whoa, can he do that anytime he wants? Hinoka shakes her head. No, his quirk is almost like a second personality. If he wants to activate it, he'd need to let his second persona take over his body. His second personality is quite different to him, though. If you were to meet him face to face, you'd hear the monster in him talk right after himself. Misa makes a disgusted expression. I wonder if his second persona is constantly trying to take over his body, like on some of the books I've read. Hinoka shakes her head again. Curiously enough, Kenshin seems to be alright with this second personality thus far. I don't know what he sees in that monster, but he doesn't seem to be too worried about him taking over his body constantly. Hikari shrugs. Huh, well, at least he's happy. Misa raises an eyebrow. But, how do you know all of this, Hinoka? Hinoka smiles. Ever since I met them, I've been talking a lot with Saisuke. The poor boy has been telling me a lot of stuff Satoshi probably wouldn't allow him to tell me. I don't know if he just likes me or what, but I've been taking advantage of that. Haruka scoffs. You shouldn't spend so much time with him, Hinoka. The guy could be a pervert for all we know. Hinoka shrugs. I've been gaining a lot of information from my time with him, so I'd say it's worth it. Plus, I can defend myself. I'll be fine, Haruka. Hikari looks down. So, I take it that Itsuka was successfully taken. Hinoka turns away from the girls and looks outside the window. You see, I snuck into UA with Satoshi and Saisuke. Saisuke hacked into the UA security footage and played videos of a peaceful night at UA over the actual footage of the cameras so we wouldn't be noticed. Hikari raises her hand. So, kinda like how they do in cartoons. You know, when they draw something on a page and paste it in front of the cameras. Hinoka chuckles. I guess if that's how you wanna view it, yeah. Once we were inside, we headed to the student dorms to see where Itsuka was located. Luckily for us, Itsuka was going off on her own after Izuku Midoriya and Katsuki Bakugo. The two boys fought each other, so we had to stay quiet while they were at it to not be discovered by accident. Once the fight calmed down we found Itsuka all on her own. Satoshi used her quirk on her and put her to sleep. The three girls as well as Itsuka were surprised at how easy Hinoka made the whole ordeal sound. Haruka speaks. Huh, well, that was easier than I expected. So, no one noticed. At all. Hinoka shrugs. Saisuke told me he wanted to damage UA in some way, so we allowed one camera to record us walking through campus. He seems like the kind of guy that wants UA to fail out of spite. Saisuke is a pretty cynical guy that thinks he's always in the right, and he wants UA to fall apart because of its popularity. I'm sure you've all seen how much pressure UA is under right now. Misa nods. We noticed. It's really disgusting to see how cynical and rotten this society is. UA has done many things right, but as soon as they fail once, the entire population turns on them. I hate this world and its people. Hikari looks down sadly. Yeah, me too. This cruel world doesn't deserve saving. Itsuka looks down in both surprise and sadness. So that was it. She was taken away because she had been careless. And not only that, but UA was getting ganged up on because of her. Itsuka wanted to deny her former friends' bold claims about the world and the people, but she had to admit that they raised some very valid points. She got captured, and it was her fault, not UA's. Were the people really that hypocritical? The heroes that run UA had saved them countless times. Was all that worth nothing now that they failed one time? Hinoka sighs. Anyways, leaving the whole UA ordeal aside, we got Itsuka back, didn't we? The girls look away. Silence fills the room. Not even Hinoka speaks, and she looks away as well. Itsuka takes a quick peek into the room, and sees that her former friends aren't smiling, but rather, they have a noticeably sad and uncomfortable expression strewn across their faces. Hikari breaks the silence. We did, didn't we? Misa speaks next. But, it doesn't feel right to me. Does it? Haruka looks down. I missed the little slut. But this just feels wrong. Hinoka keeps looking away in silence. Itsuka suppresses a groan. How dare they feel bad? By the looks of things, they had been planning this for a long time. Now that they had successfully captured her, why were they so sad? Itsuka didn't care. She decided to get out of here as fast as possible. She'd heard more than enough. Last time she got caught overhearing something she wasn't supposed to, and she wasn't about to let that mistake happen again. Itsuka dashed through the halls of the abandoned hospital, looking for an exit. After running for some minutes, Itsuka sees the exit in front of her. But, Itsuka slips on a puddle and falls face first on the floor. What the foo? That wasn't there, was it? Itsuka thinks to herself as she gets up. Looks like you woke up sooner than expected. Itsuka looks behind her and sees a short green-haired guy grinning at her. His eyes were glowing purple and he was leaning against a wall nonchalantly. So this must be Kuki. thinks Itsuka while glaring at the boy. You, let me go or I'll pummel that shit-eating grin of yours into mush. You should probably not resist this, or you'll be mauled. Itsuka looks behind her and sees that a blue-haired guy is standing between her and the exit. That voice right after his normal speaking tone. This must be Kenshin. Itsuka glares at the guy. You won't get away with this. The heroes will come and you'll all be arrested. But you're a hero yourself, aren't you? You look incredibly helpless, weak and defenseless to be one. Itsuka looks at Kuki again and sees that a black-haired guy in a suit is standing beside him with a smug smirk. That voice. It was the same I heard when I got captured. Satoshi. Itsuka glares at Satoshi. You're their leader, aren't you? Tell them to let me go or I'll beat you to a pulp in front of them. Satoshi giggles. You can try, but it's no use. You cannot beat us, Itsuka Kendo. Itsuka clenches her teeth. So you know who I am, big deal. You attacked me when I was distracted like a coward would do. You're all a bunch of cowards. Satoshi grins. And yet, we always get our way. Besides, you can't blame us for your kidnapping, little hero. We took you here at the request of our friends. Satoshi extends his hand towards the empty hallway behind him and 4 figures emerge from the dark. Itsuka sighs at the sight of her old friends approaching. You 4, I thought you'd be better than this, Hinoka. Working with criminals like him. Really? Hinoka flinches for a moment. Itsuka, we. Itsuka interrupts Hinoka with a loud yell. I don't want your excuses. I thought you were just trying to get by, Hinoka. I never would have thought I'd see you associating with scum like him. The 4 girls look at the floor in shame. Satoshi groans. Boring. How about you leave the sentimentalities behind and claim your prize, Hinoka? Hinoka nods before aiming her hand at Itsuka. I'm very sorry about this, Itsuka. Before Itsuka can react, she feels a sharp pain in her head. Itsuka clutches her head, trying to make the pain stop unsuccessfully. It feels like someone is forcibly plunging a knife into her brain. After some moments, Hinoka's eyes glow for a moment and Itsuka's pupils copy Hinoka's green eye color. Hinoka sighs, knowing that her control over Itsuka is now absolute. Satoshi claps slowly. Well done, girls. We have one more member in our little gang. The boys look ecstatic, while the girls nod and look away. Satoshi laughs. I'd almost feel bad for her. From now on she'll be with us, being forced to commit criminal activities after having studied at UA of all places. But who am I kidding? I love tragic stories almost as much as I love romance. Hinoka looks down. She got what she wanted. But why did it hurt so much? Satoshi turns around. Well, looks like it's time for our next hit. Hinoka thinks about her situation for a moment. Before a plan forms on her head. Satoshi turns around. Yes, Hinoka. Hinoka swallows some spit. I'd like to ask for something else. You know, to control Itsuka completely. Satoshi raises an eyebrow. Oh, will it be fun for us? Hinoka nods. Yeah, it will. Satoshi claps. Alright, then, I'm listening. Hinoka sighs. There's a boy called Izuku Midoriya. Present day. Hinoka flinches at Izuku's sudden scream of raw emotion. Itsuka was currently under her control, standing in front of Izuku with a smile everyone knew was fake. Satoshi was laughing maliciously and Izuku. Dear God, did Itsuka really mean that much to him? From the information she had gathered about him, Hinoka expected Izuku to be at the same alleyway her friends had fought him and Itsuka on, but she had attributed it to some sense of reckless desire to save everyone. This was different, though. Izuku looked like he had lost someone near and dear to him. Satoshi lets go of Itsuka and looks at Hinoka with a smirk. Hinoka, will you do the honors? Hinoka sighs before sending a command into Itsuka's brain using her quirk. He's your enemy now, fight him. As if she was a robot with no free will, Itsuka's smile dropped and she immediately adopted a fighting stance. Izuku got up to his feet and looked at Itsuka with fresh tears on the corners of his eyes. I'm not gonna fight you, Itsuka. Itsuka runs towards Izuku and goes for a kick aimed towards his stomach. Then stay still and let me finish you off. Izuku barely dodges. Itsuka, snap out of it. Satoshi laughs. Come on, Izuku, she's just some wannabe hero. She's nothing compared to you. Izuku glares hatefully at Satoshi. You'll pay, Satoshi. Itsuka enlarges her fist and jumps, aiming to crush Izuku from above. Izuku moves out of the way in time, although the ground trembles from Itsuka's raw power. Izuku looks at Itsuka with tears now streaming down his face. I'm not gonna leave you, Itsuka. I'll save you. Satoshi's laughter increases in volume. Don't tell me you're getting cold feet now, Izuku. Your power makes hers pale in comparison. Izuku growls at Satoshi. Shut up, Satoshi. I'm not listening to you. Satoshi smirks sadistically. Well, now you'll have to. You always think you can save everyone, don't you? Have you ever wondered what would happen once you met someone with no redeeming qualities like me or Itsuka at this very instant? This is the perfect opportunity for you to experience it. What will it be, hero? Fight or flight? Izuku was so enraged by Satoshi that he failed to see Itsuka delivering a roundhouse kick to his head. The girls flinch upon seeing Izuku get kicked in the face and being sent to the wall behind him. Izuku gets up and puts up his fists in a resilient stance. I don't care what happens to me. I'm not gonna leave you here, Itsuka. Itsuka simply charges at Izuku with a blank expression on her face. You're not my friend. The girls look at Hinoka with concerned expressions. Hinoka looks away for a moment. Her plan was put into action. But it entirely depended on Itsuka at this point. Itsuka was having a bad time, to say the least. She was running away, but she didn't know from what. Itsuka felt like she had been running through this dark forest for hours with no light to guide her, but she didn't even know when she got there or how she got herself in this situation. The only thing she felt was a sinking sensation in her chest and an ominous feeling that something horrible would happen if she stopped. Itsuka kept running, trying to ignore the distant screams and laughter coming from behind her. But it was no use. She was already feeling tired. Itsuka stops to catch her breath, and quickly takes notice that the trees around her start to grow even more, snuffing out the dim moonlight that illuminated her path. Itsuka suddenly felt stranded, lost, cold, alone. The hushed whispers around her didn't help. Itsuka curled into a ball on the ground and tried to calm herself, but she found it quite hard. The voices, were they trying to demoralize her? It was certainly working if that was the case. Itsuka thought about staying there, lost in the dark forever. What was the point on moving forward? She didn't know where she was. She didn't know if there'd be danger ahead. And she didn't have the willpower to even stand up anymore. But then, Itsuka's mind drifts to Izuku, after his encounter with Todoroki at the sports festival. I know I could have died. I know I could have ignored it. I know my motivation might seem silly to everyone. But I've always wanted to be a hero who can save everyone, and a hero's duty is essentially to meddle where you're not called. I saw someone who needed saving, and I couldn't bring myself to let him suffer anymore. Itsuka smiles faintly at the memory of Izuku's resilience. His persistence was something she admired greatly. He certainly had the heart and guts to be one of the best heroes ever. Even if he was a bit reckless sometimes. Life sure was strange. Her first impression of him was a bit underwhelming to be honest, but he had quickly earned her respect and trust in a way no one had ever managed to do before. Hell, she was crushing on him. Izuku had always managed to find himself at the center of pretty important events and plenty of dangerous situations, but he always came out on top. Itsuka stands up, feeling encouraged by Izuku's memory. Itsuka didn't want to be left behind. If Izuku was going beyond his limits, then so would she. Then, Itsuka hears a faint whisper around her. A whisper different than every other malicious whisper. It was Izuku's voice. I'm not gonna leave you here, Itsuka. Itsuka looks around, but doesn't see anything remotely resembling of Izuku. Izuku, can you hear me? Izuku stops in his tracks once he sees Itsuka clutching her head in pain. Satoshi raises an eyebrow. Huh, what's this? Izuku sees that Itsuka is clenching her teeth and that her green pupils are starting to flicker back to her normal teal color. Izuku approaches Itsuka and extends his hand to her. Itsuka, are you okay? Then, Itsuka's pupils return to being green and she swats Izuku's hand away. Fight me, Midoriya. Izuku looks at Itsuka with a hurt expression. But, Itsuka, I don't want to do this. I can't do this. You're my friend. Itsuka's stare is blank and expressionless. You're no longer my friend. Satoshi smiles. That's better, girl. End him. Izuku staggers back with a worried expression. Itsuka, no. Itsuka immediately dashes at Izuku and goes for a punch towards his body with her enlarged fist. Izuku dodges it easily and observes the way Itsuka is moving. No, this isn't Itsuka. From our training sessions together I can tell she's gotten faster, and I'm having an easier time dodging her attacks now. Does it mean that Itsuka is fighting back? Is she holding back? Or, am I not fighting the real Itsuka? Satoshi groans. Come on, Izuku. All I'm asking you to do is fight your friend to the death and you can't even do that. Attack her or she'll end you. Itsuka spins towards Izuku with her fists enlarged like a saw. Izuku dodges Itsuka's attack, and he notices that she's slowing down. Don't listen to him, Itsuka. Fight. Fight it. Itsuka blinks and she suddenly finds herself in a clear pasture at noon. It certainly was a nicer place than the dark forest, although there was something in the air that felt wrong. You're not supposed to fight back. Itsuka turns around at the sound of her own voice, and she's met with the sight of a dark version of herself which is engulfed in shadows and has glowing green dots as eyes. Itsuka squints her eyes. I'm not staying down. The shadowy Itsuka has no mouth, although Itsuka hears her voice in her head. She sounds like herself, but her voice is rather low and deep. You will. My purpose is to hold you here. Itsuka scoffs. Your purpose? Yeah, right. That just tells me you don't even have free will. You're someone's puppet, aren't you? The shadowy Itsuka remains calm. Maybe I am, but I'm still a better option than you. Itsuka glares at her dark reflection. Ha, very funny. The dark Itsuka nods. Indeed, the fact that someone's recreation is a better option than the original is quite funny. Itsuka crosses her arms. Look, pal, I don't know where you came from or who you are, but I can guarantee that you're not better than me. The shadowy Itsuka giggles ominously. Right, because you've done so much thus far. Itsuka feels her heart rate speed up a little. Excuse me. The dark Itsuka snaps her fingers and the pasture suddenly shifts and transforms into a place she didn't want to see ever again. Itsuka steps back. No, not here. Before Itsuka can react, she finds herself inside the house she didn't want to go in and sees her younger self breaking in from the back, along with Hinoka, Hikari, Misa and Haruka. The dark Itsuka chuckles. Yes, you're not a hero. A true hero would never do something like this and live with it. Itsuka sees her younger self and her friends about to come into the living room, where an old man is sitting, watching TV peacefully. Itsuka tries to grab herself, but her hand phases through her younger self, as if she was a ghost. No, not like this, not this. As soon as the young girls come into the living room, the old man starts to clutch his chest in pain and falls on the floor with a pained expression. Itsuka tries to run towards the old man, but feels her feet stuck to the spot she's in. You can't do this. Let me go. The girls immediately start to plunder the house, looking for the most valuable resources and starting to put them in bags. Itsuka sees that her younger self is just watching the old man die in front of her without doing anything about it. Itsuka tears up. You bastard. This isn't how it happened. Let me go. The old man collapses to the floor and a puddle of blood forms below him. Itsuka's younger self looks back at her with a sadistic smile. Her former friends join in. Itsuka feels as if she's in a nightmare she can't wake up from. The old man, the person who didn't judge her and offered kindness to her. He was dying in front of her eyes, and her younger self was smiling. The dark Itsuka laughs. That's right, you're not a good person, Itsuka. I might be a puppet, but at least I know what I stand for. Accept the facts and let me win. Itsuka chokes on a muffled sob, knelling down on the spot. That's not true. I'm better now. The shadowy Itsuka chuckles. No, you're not. All of this is your fault. You've done nothing right. You've done nothing worth noticing. If people knew this about you, how would they react? Your classmates and friends would lose their respect for you. You'd be expelled from UA. You'd bring dishonor to your family's name. Face it, you're no hero. Itsuka sits on the floor for a moment. Was her dark counterpart right? Was she too late to atone for her mistakes? Then, her thoughts drift to the old man again. She remembers the moment she saw him at the hospital. His words, "You're not a bad person. No one truly is. We're all just trying to cope with our own problems. I believe in you, little girl. You're way too young to call yourself a bad person. Even if you're a little misguided now, you're still on time to take a better path. We all believe in you, and we know you'll get to wherever you want to if you just try." Itsuka takes a deep breath to calm herself. The old man was right. So what if she was falling behind? That was just a boost to her desire to keep surpassing herself. So what if her friends and classmates knew about her past? She's not the same person she was back then. So what if she's made a few mistakes along the way? She was a hero in training, damn it. She'd atone for her mistakes and save people for as long as she lived. Itsuka stands up and walks towards her dark counterpart, who looks absolutely flabbergasted about the fact that Itsuka is actually moving. Itsuka speaks in a low, yet serious and threatening tone. "Listen to me, you second-rate knockoff. You wanna let everyone know about me and the skeletons in my closet? Fine. Tell everyone for all I care. I've changed for the better, while you'll always stay as you are. Just some pitiful toy for someone to play with. I don't care about my past anymore. If I have a chance to do something to make a better future for myself and everyone in the world as a hero, I'm not gonna waste time being stuck in the past. So, up yours." Itsuka punches her dark counterpart with her enlarged fist, and everything goes black for a moment. Izuku notices that Itsuka's eyes are glowing less bright and that she's clutching her head again. It was as if whatever was controlling her was suddenly having a much harder time doing so. Izuku smiles faintly. Yes, come on, Itsuka." Satoshi groans. "You're expecting a lot from her, Izuku. Fight." Then, Itsuka shakes her head and charges at Izuku again, although her movements are noticeably slower and easier to predict. Izuku keeps dodging Itsuka's attacks. "Itsuka, you can do it." Itsuka opens her eyes and looks around. This place, so familiar. Itsuka sees that she's on a park, and everything looks taller for some reason. Itsuka takes a look at herself and sees that she's a kid again. In fact, she is younger than when she met the girls. Itsuka sees her dark counterpart appear in front of her. "I have to admit, you are certainly more stubborn than I expected." Itsuka glares at her counterpart. "That's just me." The shadowy Itsuka chuckles. "But you're not getting out. I will hold you here. I will keep you here. No matter how much you struggle." Itsuka crosses her arms. "Try me." The dark Itsuka giggles. "You make extravagant promises you're not gonna ever be able to deliver on. ... You think things have changed just because you're a hero in training. No, nothing has changed. In this world, you don't stand a chance with your quirk. You're not fit to be a hero. Everyone will just laugh at you like they've always done. That demo commercial you filmed alongside Yaoyorozu is the only thing you'll ever amount to do for as long as you live. Because in this world fame and recognition are only for some lucky individuals. You are not one of them. Face it and acknowledge your place in this world." 6 figures appear the dark Itsuka, and Itsuka's eyes widen. They were some of the people who bullied her. Girls who thought she wasn't feminine enough and boys who mocked her quirk. Itsuka felt a twinge of fear on her heart. She suddenly felt like a defenseless little kid again. The people got closer and started to laugh once they were close enough to Itsuka. Itsuka drops to her knees and faces away from them, trying to ignore the onslaught of insults thrown her way as well as the small stones being thrown to her back. "Get up, man hands." "What? Don't tell me you can't get up, clumsy claws. Show us what you've got, monster mitts." Itsuka tears up again. The dark Itsuka chuckles. "See the people you want to protect. They'll keep laughing at you even if you give it your all to save them. Give up already. You obviously feel belittled from these insults. Let me take your mind. I promise I'll take care of it." You're only suffering because you're holding me back and you know it. Izuku sees that Itsuka's movements are getting faster and that her pupils are tinted in that unnatural green color again. Izuku sweats. No. Is she giving up? Satoshi giggles. See, you have no option, Izuku. Kill her or she'll kill you. What will it be? Itsuka punches Izuku's chest with her enlarged fist, sending him crashing to a wall. Itsuka speaks in a monotone voice. You're not my friend, Izuku Midoriya. Stay down and let me complete my task. Izuku coughs and looks up at Itsuka, who is towering over him, ready to deliver the final blow. Izuku speaks in a sad, yet desperately hopeful tone. Itsuka, please. I know you'd never hurt me. This isn't you. Whatever it is that's controlling you, I know you can beat it. Itsuka heard it. That voice. It felt really familiar. Then, the dark Itsuka stops laughing and looks to the side, where another figure is emerging. Itsuka also looks at it, and sees that it's a boy her age, although he's covered in shadows and his face is blurred. The boy stands in between Itsuka and the people making fun of her. The bullies raise an eyebrow. Huh, who are you and why are you defending Hands of all people? Chi, that's mean. Stop hurting her. Someone's standing up for Lumber Fists. Both Itsukas look surprised. The dark Itsuka snaps her fingers, but nothing happens. What? Is this a core memory? I can't seem to alter or modify it. Itsuka looks at the figure with a mix of gratitude, curiosity and familiarity. Where had she heard that voice before? Izuku notices that Itsuka is hesitating, and he smiles. Itsuka, I know you're probably fighting with everything you've got. Izuku takes advantage of Itsuka being hesitant to step closer to her. I just want to reassure you. I want to be there for you. I know you're struggling right now, and I won't leave you alone. I believe in you. Then, the boy's face becomes unblurred. Itsuka gasps. It was Izuku. Upon seeing that this wasn't worth the effort, the bullies scoff and walk away. The young Izuku turns around and offers his hand to Itsuka, trembling slightly from the possibility of a real confrontation having occurred. Are you okay? Itsuka feels her lips moving on their own, as if this exact scenario had happened before. Why yes, I am. Thank you so much. And no problem. Don't listen to them. But, they called me names and made fun of my quirk. I think your quirk is amazing. You can do awesome stuff with it. Really? Why yeah, I believe you can. Then, the younger Izuku disappears and everything falls into place for Itsuka. At the sports festival, when she met him for the first time. Now she understood why she swore she had seen him before. At Twinkle Park, this was the memory that had been blurred out from her mind. This happened there. When talking to him, now she understood why being around him felt familiar. Izuku sees that Itsuka is stepping back from him with a conflicted expression. At the moment, Itsuka acted like a robot being told to do something against its own programming. Izuku's smile widens and he talks in a soft tone. I knew you were fighting, Itsuka. You've always been one tough cookie. Izuku wraps his arms around Itsuka in a warm hug. Come on, Itsuka, come back. I know you can do it and I believe in you. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you when you got captured, but I promise that won't happen anymore. I care about you and I promise I'll always be there for you the way you've been there for me. Because I love you. Itsuka heard it. Hearing Izuku's confession made Itsuka grin from ear to ear. Even though things looked rather grim in these past few days, there was always tomorrow. Now that she knew how Izuku felt. Now that she remembered and acknowledged the piece of herself she had been missing. Now that she had been given a chance to atone for her past mistakes. There was nothing holding her back from being the best version of herself. To be worthy of being with him. To be recognized as the capable person she knows she is. To be her own hero. To make peace with her past and embrace the future with a smile. To become Battle Fist, the hero who builds her path with her own hands. Itsuka's mind drifts to the night Izuku had told her about One for All. I feel safe with you, Itsuka. All my life I've felt like I couldn't trust anyone. I always felt like no one would watch my back, because all I've ever gotten out of people is judging stares and disappointed looks. But I don't feel that way with you. I feel like I can tell you anything, like I can accept the past and embrace the future with a smile with you. You are my safe place, Itsuka. Izuku. Itsuka felt a tear of happiness escape her eyes. Through it all, it appears that Izuku was the one that had been there for her since the very beginning. Izuku was the only person who got to know her. The real her, and he had been the sweetest, most supportive and caring guy she had ever met. Itsuka lets out a deep sigh of relief. She wasn't going to give up. Izuku believed in her. He has believed in her from the beginning. And by all that is holy, she was not going to let him down. Itsuka gets up on her feet, and the park fades away, leaving the two Itsukas in a blank void. The dark Itsuka's jaw is practically on the floor, even without having one. How did you do it? You were supposed to be lost in the darkness and I finally gained control of your brain. Itsuka chuckles. The dark Itsuka grunts. Itsuka's chuckle turns into a loud laughter. The shadowy Itsuka growls. What are you laughing at? Itsuka walks towards her dark counterpart with a smile. I'm laughing at you, you pathetic and idiotic excuse of a puppet. The dark Itsuka growls. Who are you calling pathetic? Itsuka stands in front of her twin with a grin. I think I know what you are now. Hinoka created you and put you inside my mind to control me, right? You're nothing but some split personality disorder that will disappear any moment now. The dark Itsuka growls again. This isn't over. Itsuka crosses her arms with a smile. For you it is, actually. I don't care about your stupid projections anymore. The real world needs me, and I'm not gonna sit idly by while Izuku is fighting by himself on the front lines. I'll stay by his side through it all, because I love him and because I owe it to myself to be better. The dark Itsuka suddenly feels a strange sensation on her chest, so she looks over to her right arm and sees it fading away. What is this ominous feeling in my chest? Itsuka sighs. You know, you had a pretty short and sad life. Your sole purpose was to subdue me using fear and my anxieties in order to satisfy someone else's wishes while not being able to feel fear yourself. Itsuka's smile turns into a grin. Until now, that is. The dark Itsuka tries to step back from Itsuka, but feels her feet stuck to the spot. No, don't approach. Itsuka enlarges her fist and smiles one last time. Sayonara. Itsuka punches her dark counterpart, and everything fades away. Itsuka's legs stop supporting her. Izuku catches her before she hits the floor. Itsuka, can you hear me? Then, Itsuka opens her eyes and looks at Izuku with a small, yet relieved smile. Yes, Izuku, I can hear you. Izuku smiles and feels himself tearing up at the sight of Itsuka's normal teal eyes. Itsuka, oh my god, I missed you. Itsuka pulls Izuku in for a much-needed kiss on the lips. Although surprised, Izuku doesn't pull away. The two heroes in training savor this moment dearly, as the stress of the last few days melts away from their minds, having found each other at last. The couple is interrupted by a very surprised-looking Satoshi. How did? Izuku pulls away from Itsuka and looks at Satoshi, and feels his rage return. You'll pay for everything you've done, Satoshi. Come here. Izuku activates One for All and Itsuka takes a fighting stance. Satoshi looks to the side, but he sees that the girls are gone. Bitches. They left me. If I get out of this, they're dead. Satoshi growls before running out of the room and into the hospital hallways, with Izuku and Itsuka chasing after him. Satoshi yells at the top of his lungs. Kenshin, Kuki, Saisuke, anyone. Itsuka growls from behind Satoshi. You're nothing without your lackeys, are you? Then, a red-haired guy and a short green-haired guy come out from different rooms and stand protectively in front of Satoshi. Satoshi yells at them. What took you so long, idiots? Kill them or I'll kill you. Kenshin, who was already in his buffed form due to the commotion, lunges at Izuku while Kuki stares at Itsuka, his eyes glowing purple while doing so. Itsuka remembers what she heard her friends say about her opponent's quirks and she calls out to Izuku, who barely dodges Kenshin's attack. Izuku, go for the green-haired dude. He can only cause bad luck to one person at a time. Izuku kicks Kenshin's chest, pushing him back a bit to catch his breath. Really? How do you know that, Itsuka? Itsuka slips and falls on a tube of medicine. Just trust me on this one. Izuku nods before leaping towards the end of the hallway, where Kuki is located. Kuki tries to run away, but the speed Izuku is moving at proves to be too much after having trained with Gran Torino. Michigan. Once Izuku is above Kuki, he brings his leg down to his head with great force. Smaash. The green-haired boy's head is smashed to the floor by Izuku's kick, and he loses conscience. Satoshi glares at his fallen subordinate. Kuki, you idiot, what was that? Izuku wastes no time before running back to Itsuka to help her fend Kenshin off. Itsuka sees Kenshin and Izuku approach and an idea crosses her mind. Izuku, be ready. Izuku nods. Once Kenshin is close enough, Itsuka uppercuts him, enlarging her fist at the last moment to send the boy higher. Street. Lewis. Once Kenshin is in the air, Izuku prepares his legs. Smaash. The beast boy is slammed down by Izuku, cracking the floor as a result. Kenshin tries to get up, but Itsuka stands over him with a smirk. I don't think so, sunshine. Itsuka enlarges her fist and punches him in the face, knocking him out cold. Satoshi clenches his teeth. Idiots. Izuku looks back at Satoshi and jumps through the hallway at him the way Gran Torino would, and in no time, Izuku pins Satoshi to the floor. Satoshi struggles under Izuku. Let me go. Izuku looks at Satoshi with an ominous expression. Satoshi, you should feel proud. Satoshi raises an eyebrow. What? All this time, of all those I have faced, you're the only person that I really hate. Satoshi feels a pang of fear hit his soul. Wait, you don't understand. Izuku's stare hardens. You made things personal in a way no one else has managed to do. Satoshi struggles harder. You weren't even in my original plan, man. Izuku sighs. I almost feel bad for you. Living a life that way that you do. Only getting your kicks by making other people's lives miserable. You're nothing but a lonely man and I almost feel sorry for you. Izuku raises his fist. Satoshi trembles. Wait, I can give you anything. Money, fame, mansions, a reputation, please. Izuku smirks. You're lucky I'm not like you, Satoshi. Sleep well. I hope I don't catch you on the streets or I'll come for you again. Izuku punches Satoshi in the face, and the boy is instantly knocked out. Izuku lets out a sigh of relief and stands over Satoshi for some moments, letting all his frustrations out. Eventually, Izuku goes over to Itsuka, who is restraining Kenshin and Kuki with a very dirty-looking rope. Itsuka smiles at Izuku. Got him. Izuku smiles back. Got him. Are we missing anything? Itsuka thinks for a moment. I think we are. Follow me. Izuku follows Itsuka to the basement. Izuku didn't know why Itsuka was leading him there, but he trusted her. Once the couple reaches the basement, they see a person facing away from them, sitting in front of a desk with many monitors. Many monitors were displaying images and information about UA, the news, the weather and the social climate. If that wasn't enough to assure Itsuka that this was Saisuke, the antenna emerging from his head surely was. Not to mention all the questionable photos of Hinoka that were displayed on some of the monitors. Itsuka rolls her eyes and decides to get this over with. Itsuka pokes the guy in the shoulder. Saisuke grunts. How many times do I have to tell you to leave me alone during my private time, Satoshi? I swear you can't ge. Saisuke freezes upon turning around and seeing Izuku and Itsuka behind him. Izuku chuckles. Hello there. Itsuka smirks. Pervert. Before Saisuke can respond, Izuku and Itsuka punch him in the face simultaneously, knocking him out. The girls of the Akita Hoshi Club were unusually quiet on their walk home. The only sound echoing through the alleyway was the sound of Hinoka's high-heeled boots clicking on the ground as she walked. The events of the last few days had been quite something. And yet, no one even knew what to say. Hikari sighs and decides to address the elephant in the room. Hey, Hinoka. Hinoka looks at Hikari. Yes, so, You did it on purpose, didn't you? What? Well, I know you said your quirk wasn't as strong as Satoshi's when controlling people. But you definitely could have kept controlling Itsuka if you wanted. You weakened your quirk's effects on her so she'd have an easier time breaking free, didn't you? Hanoka looks away. Misa joins in on the conversation. Also, you told Satoshi to look for Izuku Midoriya because you wanted him to help Itsuka break free. Right. Hanoka chuckles. Well, Haruka joins in too. Plus, getting Midoriya and Itsuka in the same place would be enough to arrest Satoshi and his gang now that they both have their hero licenses. Hanoka sighs. Was I that obvious? Haruka nods. A little bit, yes. Hanoka looks back at the path in front of her. So, what if I did? Hikari smiles. Nothing. I was just making sure. Hanoka smiles too. In that case, yes. I did. Hikari chuckles. Thought so. I'm glad I'm not the only one who regretted doing all of this. Misa looks away in shame. So, I'm sure we can all agree that this was a bad idea, can't we? The girls look down. Haruka sighs. Yeah, it definitely was. Hanoka looks back at her friends. Girls, I want to do something, but I don't know if it's a good idea or not. The girls look at their leader with a small spark of curiosity. Hanoka looks back at the road on front of her. I want to see Itsuka again. Maybe not right now, since all of this is still pretty fresh, but I want to see her again. I feel like there's a lot of things I want to say to her. I want to at least see her one more time. Misa smiles. I want to see her as well. Hikari smiles too. Me three. Haruka smiles faintly. I guess it wouldn't hurt to see the silly slut one more time. Hanoka smiles. Well, let's just wait a bit for now. And this time, we won't force things. Hikari giggles softly. Yeah, that sounds good. Izuku sighs as he walks out of the press's site alongside Itsuka. They had called the police using Sasuke's equipment, and soon, the police arrived alongside the press to document the whole incident. Izuku and Itsuka answered the many questions they were asked and fled the scene as soon as they saw an opportunity to do so. Tomorrow they'd see how society reacted to Itsuka's rescue. Itsuka leans her head on Izuku's shoulder and wraps her arms around him as they walk back to UA. After all the bullshit she had to endure, being around Izuku again felt incredibly comforting. Izuku looks at Itsuka with a soft smile. Itsuka. Itsuka looks at Izuku with a smile of her own. Yes. Izuku blushes slightly. Well, I just wanna ask you something. Itsuka's smile doesn't diminish. Ask away, Izuku. Well, when I was fighting you back there, how much did you hear? Itsuka chuckles. It was a really strange experience. At first I couldn't hear much, but I heard more and more as time progressed. Izuku looks away briefly with a sheepish smile. So, you didn't hear much, did you? Itsuka giggles. I might have heard something spicy. Izuku gulps. Something spicy. Itsuka stops on her tracks and looks at Izuku with a teasing smile. I thought I heard you say that you loved me. Not to mention I was pretty awake during that kiss. Izuku freezes in place. After a moment, Izuku starts to tremble, stutter and look everywhere but at Itsuka. Well, you see, I was, you. Itsuka chuckles. Izuku really was different when he wasn't in hero mode. Itsuka approaches Izuku and holds his face in between her hands, looking at him with an adoring expression. Don't worry, I'm glad you said so, Izuku. Izuku blushes even more, although he doesn't make an effort to move away. You are. Itsuka nods. Yeah, because I feel the same way, you dork. Before Izuku can react, Itsuka pulls his face in for another kiss on the lips. Izuku quickly stops trembling and accepts the kiss, leaning into her slightly. Itsuka wraps her arms around his neck, and Izuku wraps his arms around her waist. The couple stand there, kissing on the street for what feels like an eternity, not caring about the outside world at the moment. After all the trials and tribulations they had to face, this felt like a release both teens seriously needed. The kiss was sloppy, raw and very unexperienced, but it felt perfect. The days of stress and torments they were exposed to slowly melted away from their minds as they basked in each other's presence, reunited at last. After some moments, Itsuka lets go of Izuku and smiles warmly at him. Izuku smiles softly. Ah, that was amazing. Itsuka's smile widens. Yeah, it was. So, does that mean that we're? Itsuka nods. Yup, we are. Izuku grins before hugging Itsuka again. Good, I'm glad we are. Itsuka returns Izuku's hug, resting her forehead onto his. Thanks for coming for me, Izuku. Izuku's grin turns into a relieved smile. I would never leave you, Itsuka. I care for you more than you think. I love you. Itsuka sighs, mirroring Izuku's loving smile. Same here, goofball. You don't know how much you mean to me. I love you. After a couple of moments of comfortable silence, the pair let go of each other in order to walk back to UA again. Whatever the future held for them, it didn't matter. Both Izuku and Itsuka felt like the world had struck them with the biggest blow it could have possibly mustered up, and not only did they survive, but they had come out stronger than ever before. Heck, their other problems didn't even seem so big anymore. Whatever life threw at them next, the couple knew that they'd overcome it without issues now that they were together. It was time to go back to training in order to become the greatest heroes the world had ever seen. And the couple now knew deep in their hearts and souls. They did it. Satoshi groans on the back of the police truck. Izuku and Itsuka had handed him and his lackeys to the authorities, and now he was on his way to prison with his teammates. Satoshi groans, making his displeasure vocal to anyone who could hear. Kenshin, who was back to his normal form, glances at Satoshi and rolls his eyes. Oh, shut it, you big diva. We're in this because of you. Such an idiot. Kuki nods. Yup, if it wasn't for these stupid anti-quirk handcuffs I'd pound that face of yours into mush. Saisuke groans. Man, I wish the police allowed me to keep my photos of Hinoka. Satoshi glares at his subordinates. Silence, fools. This isn't my fault. It was his. Kenshin scoffs. Yeah, right, I should have known that those girls would outsmart you, dumbass. Such a sorry excuse of a leader. Satoshi glares at Kenshin. Shut up. I blame Izuku Midoriya for this. Once we get out of here, Izuku Midoriya will. Satoshi is interrupted when something hits the truck they were being carried away on. The truck spins and is ultimately knocked over. Before any of the boys can react, the cover of the truck is destroyed and the screams of the policemen let them know that whoever did this is definitely not messing around. The boys are dropped on the ground, and a figure appears in front of them. Satoshi looks at the figure briefly before a smile covers his face. Hey, I was wondering if I'd ever get to meet you. Well, it's me, all right. It's a miracle that we were passing through here, don't you think? Satoshi giggles. That depends on what you came here to do. I came to get rid of you permanently, Satoshi. My master has had his eyes on you for some time, and I can't allow that, you know. This is all supposed to be for me. Satoshi chuckles bitterly. And I'm guessing you're not gonna let my friends go either. Of course not. They're all dangerous if they're let loose. Kuki, Kenshin and Saisuke tremble. Satoshi chuckles. I guess it's poetic in a way, isn't it? Let me guess. Some hero got in your way and ruined your plans. Satoshi chuckles. Yup. Izuku Midoriya did. Ah. Him. Satoshi chuckles. Yeah, to be honest, I just wish I could have played with his mind some more. The way he was screaming and crying. Ooh, I'll never forget it. You're a sad one, Satoshi. Satoshi grunts. Excuse me. With a gang like yours, you could have reached great heights. But they were all held back by you and your violent needs. You're too sadistic to think clearly. How does it feel to know that you could have had everything and anything you wanted, but you were left with nothing just because of some childish desire, huh? Satoshi smiles wickedly. I only regret one thing. Not having killed the entire human race. Go to hell and take your sadistic tendencies with you, Satoshi. I'll see you there, Tamura Shigaraki. Satoshi giggles before being turned to ashes with his friends. To be continued. I hope you enjoyed this story. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.